Today, we're going to go on a journey together, building a Power App and a Dataverse solution from end to end. But also, in the process of doing this, we're going to help a charity using this hackathon model. A few months ago, a group and I visited Guatemala to help this amazing charity called Potter's House. Potter's House helps children with education and nutritional needs in that country. The average Guatemalan child only receives 2.8 years of schooling before they have to enter the workforce to help their family. I've teamed up with some of my favorite YouTube Power Platform instructors to help you learn Power Apps today and help this charity. We're going to have Matt Peterson walk us through some of the prerequisites needed today. Then John Silva is going to walk through how we brainstorm and how do we design this solution. Nate Hallowell is going to build the Dataverse tables. Matt Peterson will come back to join us to work on the model-driven application. And lastly, John Silva is going to help us build this Canvas application also. The solution we're building today is going to help Potter's House manage the children that it's under its services, and also expand their services to help the country. So let's learn a little bit about how Potter's House is helping the children of Guatemala.
Guatemala is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, with mountains, volcanoes, oceans, lakes, a rainforest, and even ancient ruins. Guatemala has much to offer. It is home to over 15 million people from 24 different ethnic groups, meaning there are a variety of languages and customs. But not all is beautiful in this country. Over 65% of the population live in poverty, and 21% of these live in extreme poverty.
Alexis is a cheerful and shy boy who lives with his parents in the community of El Ingeniero, Chiquimula, Guatemala. Alexis wakes up at 6:30 in the morning to go to school, takes a bath, puts on his uniform, and sits down to have breakfast with his siblings. When he gets out of school, he participates in Potter's House programs. So he arrives home, changes his uniform, and walks to where the organization's transportation is waiting to take him to the community center. Alexis enjoys this time very much because at Potter's House we take care of him in a holistic way. He begins his day with a nutritious lunch that helps him in his physical and cognitive development, the most important aspects in his transformation process. Alexis' nutritional condition is precarious, since before arriving at Potter's House, he has suffered from chronic malnutrition. Through the education program, Alexis has improved his reading fluency. He has found the support he needs to do his homework, and together, Alexis, his family, and Potter's House have created opportunities for him to have a better future. For almost 38 years, Potter's House has provided holistic development programs in education and nutrition for children and youth like Alexis. There is still much to do, but we know that we are together in this journey. You too can be part of changing a life like Alexis. There are many children and young people who need you today to transform their families, community, and nation.
If you would like to help Potter's House yourself, we have a promotion code for our on-demand platform, Potter's 40, to get 40% off our on-demand platform, and we'll give $40 in your name to Potter's House. So before we begin, let's learn about the prerequisites needed for today with Matt Peterson. Well, welcome to our first section on building your first Power App solution in Dataverse. Well, I'm here today with Matt Peterson. Hey, Matt.
Hey.
He runs our Power Apps team at Pragmatic Works, and he'll be teaching us and talking us through the prerequisites required for this class. Matt, we need a few of those. We're going to need an environment to build our application out,
Yep.
and we'll need some solutions as well, right? Some pre-built solutions that might help them with ready-made.
Yeah, and the reason we're going to get these solutions in is we don't want you to have to build all the tables with us together. We want you to start building the app with us. We got some pre-created work for you, but the app development is going to be really the special part of this here.
Gotcha. So let's start with an environment. What is an environment we're about to create here?
So an environment, if I have any Power BI users here today, Power BI in the workspaces, you have people that can collaborate and work together. In an environment in the Power Platform, this is where we can have multiple people, just one person only, but it's where you go to develop your work. And from here, we're doing Power Apps, but you do your environments with Power Automate, Copilot Studio, Power Pages, and Power Apps. So one is kind of like a big fold folder structure where you go in and start making all of your work. And then later down the road, you start talking about application lifecycle management, moving it from dev to test and then to prod. So we want an environment that we can work in, create our tables and create our apps. And then, what's going to be great is we can always take these solutions that we're going to be building and we can move them into other environments if we ever need to.
Okay, so this will be creating our dev environment in this case, right?
Exactly.
So, but we'll eventually want a QA and a prod environment also. And these environments are also where your users are going to go someday to actually use the applications.
Exactly right. Yes, when we start to share these apps out with other users.
And every environment has its own database also?
Yes, every environment can. You can have up to one Dataverse store or Dataverse database. And that's what we're going to be using in here. And these applications that we're going to be developing, we're going to be using Dataverse to store this data because just Dataverse is awesome. It's
cool.
So much security, tables, columns, it's great.
Cool. We're going to cover a lot more about Dataverse in our next little piece here with John. But let's go ahead and begin. How does a user create an environment, like a development environment?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that we'd want to do is we want to go out to make.powerapps.com. And if you have a license already, when you log in, you're going to be in an environment. And there's some special environments out there. One that I always like to tout here is the Microsoft free developer environment. You can see that I've got it here. I've had this now for over 4 years. And it's a great environment because it's free. You get Dataverse, you get your premium features, and you don't have to pay for it. Now, again, one of the caveats to it is you get to develop it, but in terms of production usage, it's meant just for development purposes. But as we'll learn, you can always export what you create here into your official environments. So for those of you who may not have this environment, just want to show you how quick it is to find this. If you just go out to Google, we'll put this link in the description of the video as well to go to this link. It's called the Power Apps Developer Plan. Once you are on this page, you just come on down here and you click Start Free. And then you're just going to put in your work or school email address, and then you'll put the check, and then you'll hit Start Free. Now, again, some companies, some organizations don't let you sign up for the developer environment.
Yeah, especially government entities I found don't allow it. Some universities do not as well. But there's other ways of doing this as well, right?
Yep, there's other ways of doing it. But this is a great one. If it works for you, great, that's awesome. But if this plan doesn't work for you, when you're logged into Power Apps, if you come into the upper right-hand corner of your Power Apps screen and you go into your settings area, and from the settings area, if you'll click on your admin center, this is going to open up your admin center. And again, different organizations have different restrictions on if they're going to let you create environments or not. But let's just hope that, couldn't sign up for the developer environment earlier. Let's try signing you up for another environment from here. So then over on the left-hand side, we're going to click on environments. And then right up here at the top, you're just going to click on a new environment. And then once you click on new environment, you're going to get that pop-out panel, and then you're going to give your environment a name. So maybe I would call this something like my Matt Dev Potter's environment. All right, then I'm going to come down and choose a group. And now the group is just saying like what groups can be a part of this.
Right.
So, just go with none here, or should probably go with personal.
Sure, and these groups in this case are ones that I created earlier, that all the policies apply. You can skip it for the time being, but it's more of a policy group, like a data loss prevention policies get applied at group level, and it's what kind of like settings to turn on and all that. Not really important in our case right now, but we'll skip it for the time being.
And then for the type here, just choose your developer environment. Now, developer environments are great again. Every environment's a little bit different. Not going to get too far into the weeds on all the different environments, but developers, again, for the developmental purposes. And then once you choose that, you would come on down to the bottom and you would add a Dataverse store, and then you would come on over here and click on Next. So that would be one option of doing this.
And the other option is they could use trial here also, right?
Yes, and that is the other option. So what's great about trial as well is you get a Dataverse store that comes with it. So I'd click on Add a Dataverse store. I've already have a trial environment made for today's session. The only thing with trial environments, they do expire after 30 days. Mm-hmm. So developer and the free developer plan from Microsoft probably is the best route, but this might be your other route to go. And then again, I guess if not, if you have an environment that supports Dataverse, this would still be a great learning environment to go into.
Gotcha. Now, if we toggle that Dataverse to true, there's one setting I'll make sure we bring up on the next screen here also. And that is when you go next is that security group right there.
Yes.
What should they do with that?
So for the security group here, this is where you're going to want to choose a security group for users to come into. Now, if you don't choose a security group, you're going to get a warning that says you cannot make the environment. This is allowing what people that are in certain security groups could you add into this environment. So for me, what I do here at Pragmatic Works is I choose that is in open access. Now at other organizations, they're going to have different security groups, right, Brian?
So these are basically the AD people, the people inside of AD. If you're not part of the AD group, you're not allowed into the environment.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean you have any access in the environment. It just means you can get there. And then once you get there, you'll find you can't do anything in it.
Can't do a darn
So we'll cover
thing.
security more later also. But all right, so it's that one setting. You'll hit done in this case.
Yep. And then I've already made a trial environment, so I'm not going to be able to make one here. But once that environment gets created, it takes a few moments to get created. And then that's kind of where we're going to be to do our work for
Cool.
this.
So you mentioned one thing there. I'll make sure we emphasize that
Yes.
also. Whether you're doing developer environment, the first way he showed, or creating an environment this way, it might take about 2 minutes to create, sometimes as much as 10 minutes to create that environment.
Yep.
That's why we're doing this now and before we start coding in a moment here. Now, once the environment is created, there's one more piece you want to do. You want to go ahead and import 2 solutions. One solution is going to give us a little color to our forms, and you'll see a little more friendly user interface. And then one solution is actually the complete solution that has everything that you'll need for today. So we want to make sure we give you some nice swag that you can kind of work with. How would one go about importing those 2 zip files that we gave you?
Great question. So in the description in the video here, you are going to see the downloads to the different solutions. And then once you download those, once that environment has been created, and again, it could take, depends on the day, of Microsoft, how busy the servers are. So I'm going to close out of here and I'm going to go into my trial environment that I have created here. And so once your environment is created, when you go to environment at the top and you click on it, you can just search for that environment name. So I have one here called Matt August.
Okay.
And then when I'm ready to import a solution, I'll come over here to the left-hand side and click on Solutions. Now, with my solutions, this is where any solutions that you might have made in your environments are already here. If it's a new one, you're just going to see the common data service solution, the default solution. But when you're ready to bring in, see, Brian did all the hard work for us. He set all of this up. He's like, hey, let's start with this as our building blocks. I'm like, thank you so much, Brian. Let's import what you've got. So up here in the top left, I'm going to click on Import Solution.
Okay.
And then over here on the right where it says Browse, we're going to click on Browse. Now, one important thing to note, the files that you download, they're going to be zipped up files. The solution files still have to be zipped when you do import these. So don't extract the solution files that have been extracted from the whole course download. So I'm going to click on Browse here.
Uncompress the main file, but leave the zip files for each of these 2 alone. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. And the first one we want to do, and so I just have it in my download section here, but our colorful options managed, we're going to click on it. We're going to click on Open. And then at this point, it's going to say, here's what you're pointing to. And then right down here at the bottom, you're just going to click on Next.
If anything were to fail, it would fail right here.
Right here, exactly.
We can show in a moment what that failure looks like also. Before this finishes importing, we can go ahead and try importing the other one and show what a failure looks like.
You got it.
Cool.
So from here, we would click on Import and go through, but you said you want to show that failure?
Let's go ahead and import it, because it will take about 2 minutes. So
right.
as long as we're fast enough to catch it before this finishes importing.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to click on Import right here.
Okay.
And it's going to initiate the import. And you're going to see that in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. It's going to take a while to import. So, Brian, you ready for me to import the next one?
Let's go ahead and import the next one. Even though we're not ready, you guys make sure that top part is green. We just want to show you what the error looks like, and that's why we're doing this right now. So we're going to import the second file right now. Again, you do not do this until it's green up top. So you may want to pause us or whatnot.
So now I'm going to go to the Potter's House Treasure System here. I'm going to open. I'm going to click Next. So we can see that this solution still has not been imported yet. And, oh, what's that telling us?
So this is an error, intentional error in this case. We actually, that we're doing things out of order. That we are trying to import our final solution, but this has a dependency. So if he hits View Dependency right now, we're going to see that this one relies on, this other one has not finished being installed yet. So these solutions, by the way, let's go. What was the solution real quick at a high level while we're waiting for that to turn? It turned green. Let's go ahead and do that.
Let me close this out here. So now I'll be able to import the other solution. So I'm going to click on Cancel. I'm going to start the whole process over. So colorful options are good. Now I can import the Potter's solution. And we're going to open that up. And then I'll come on down and click on Next.
Now hopefully, there we go.
So now we're good. And now I'm going to click on import, and we're going to let that go through. So common question I get in a lot of my classes, whether live training or the on-demand, is what is a solution? And to me, I think of a solution as two main ideas. One, it helps you organize your work, and two, it allows for portability. So whenever you're working on a project, and it might have some applications, some Power Automate flows, some Dataverse tables, you don't want that all just outside the sphere. You want it to be all just like, when you get downloads and you put your files on your computer, you put them in folders, right, to keep it organized. So when I'm working on a specific project for a customer, I have it all inside a solution. So I click on my solution folder, and there's all of my work. And then when I'm done with it, if we need to transport it, we just download that. Just like Brian, you download it from your environment. We have the file. Now I can import it into my environment. So I think those are the two main ideas.
It's like an installer then, basically. An organizer and an installer all in one foul swoop.
Yeah.
So Matt, this is going to take a while to install. But what we're going to do next is we're going to start designing our system out while this is importing. So we're going to do what's called a stall technique in the business while we go out and start to work on other pieces. But as you can see, you'll know you're done when you have two green boxes. You can dismiss the first green box up top, the one that is green, and then wait for that gray box to turn green. And we're going to do a little of a design session with John next to cover what we're building today, why we're making some of the choices we're making in our hackathon. But thanks for getting us started though, Matt.
Hey, no problem. It was fun to do it.
So I'm here today with John Silva, one of our trainers from Pragmatic Works. John, what do you train at Pragmatic Works?
Yeah, so as part of the Power Platform team, what we train most on is, Power Platform, of course, and the applications and the integration between them. So if it's Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot Studio, Power Pages, and even Power BI, we really focus on being able to handle all of those different applications and to help people put them all together as one as well.
Awesome. Now, Potter's House wants to make sure that people can only see the data at the region that they belong to. So if I'm in Chiquimula or Guatemala City, I should only be able to see the students in that region. Where does it make sense to store the data with that requirement?
So if they're looking to have that app essentially on the go, right, because they want to be able to walk around with it and based on their region, we're really thinking Power Apps Canvas app in that case. Right? It gives you a lot of options as far as the UI, but it also gives the option to have that on just about any device that you want to use it on as well.
Gotcha. How about data storage?
Data storage, I'm thinking Dataverse. Okay. If we're thinking only for that region, that sounds security to me. And Dataverse lends itself perfectly to having
Gotcha.
security.
So no filters required, really. Yeah. We just kind of tell it to, hey, you can only see your own records or you can only see your department's records, and then it just works magically. So, okay, so we got our data source. We could have used other places like SharePoint, but that would not have been nearly as secure.
No.
It would have limited our number of rows. So we're choosing Dataverse to do that. And we're going to choose model-driven for which piece of what element of this?
I think Canvas for the teachers, and then administrators, whoever might be wanting to see everybody's data and kind of control that way. I think model-driven lends itself to that type of application from there.
Yeah, so let's show a picture of what that looks like. Our final application will look like the picture you're seeing on your screen right now. And this will be the model-driven app. As you can see, there are tons of different options up top for things like reporting, the forms, and there's views to see the data, forms to enter the data. Now, the Canvas app, though, requires a lot more planning. The model-driven app, it's pretty much Microsoft bakes it out of the easy bake oven, and it comes out, it's already ready to go. Let's walk through this Canvas application. So let's first probably whiteboard this, and what this Canvas application is going to do for our teachers is we're going to build a really simple one to do inspections of health. Okay. So every 3 times a year, the Potter's House does an inspection. They weigh the children. They'll measure them, make sure they're growing, they get the right nutrition, and they'll also just do a quick general check on them, get observations and all that. Okay. So you're basing on that. We're going to make this a phone app so that they can use voice text and all of that. How many screens make sense to you?
Probably 2. Something like a welcome landing page where we open up our phone, because if we're going to use it most on phone, we kind of have that kind of vertical layout, that portrait mode on it. And then on that screen, we can have the teacher's information, who's logged in, so they can know that that's for me and that's my class. And then like a list of all the students available. Okay. Make it really easy to pick a student and then go do something with that student.
Perfect. So we can use that same design for other applications we do.
Exactly.
Now, when we build a Canvas app, we can choose to do a tablet-facing app or a a phone-based facing app. It does not mean, however, when we do that we choose phone app, that we're limiting just to phones. We can build this on a PC, on a Mac, on a tablet, whatever.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and design it. What do you think? So you said the welcome screen in this case?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get our whiteboard out here and let's kind of plan our two screens, it sounds like.
All right, so we'll start off with, I'm going to make these kind of the vertical portrait modes. So we'll start off with, here's one, here's our phone. If this is the landing screen, I'm thinking something probably at the top here would be our header.
Okay.
So we can have maybe an image of the person who's logged in.
Kind of classic office
Yeah,
style.
it's similar to what you'd imagine there. So that's your user photo right there. So we can just kind of design that right there, user photo.
Okay.
We could have probably something in here like the name of the app, a header, or something like that, right? So that would be just so they know exactly what they're working with. And then maybe in the top left, sometimes it lends itself to be able to have, if you want to put in a logo, right? If you want to put company, school, whatever it might be, you can have your logo right there. This is a nice header that we can use. And it's one of the great things with Canvas apps is there is one that's called the modern header that actually comes with all these built in. So it's add one in and plug and play.
And it's responsive.
Yeah.
So if you have a phone device, it can expand or contract based on that.
Exactly. So that's kind of the top level there.
So let's make this as simple as possible because these teachers are busy, right?
Yeah.
So maybe show a picture of the student and then maybe the name of the student underneath it.
I think that would be next. The next section here is what we could do is I'll just kind of split this in half so that we can almost think of it like if I have an area here where I'm kind of just choosing all of the different students in like a grid format. So I can see the students here by picture. Maybe my grid's not perfectly sized, but something like that where each student has maybe their photo, right? And then we have their name right next to it.
Perfect.
And we can repeat that for every single student. Click on a student. Let's go enter their details.
And that's called a gallery, right?
Yeah.
That's how we'll do that. It's a gallery of data.
Exactly. In the gallery, we can decide what fields or which columns show up in that gallery. It's really customizable for us. So we can have it their name, we can have it their age, we can have other things in there if we want.
Cool.
And it's really easy to work with.
So when you click on one of those items, we'll go to our next screen next, right?
Then the next screen would look, it's going to be the same layout, right? Whereas we're going to have the same thing. We'll carry over our header. So just assume that the header is carrying over. And then from here, what we could do is, let's say we want to add in just a list of the records, like maybe their past ones or present ones, whatever we've been collecting about that student.
Sure.
So we can put in like a table in here. And we can use a table, either a gallery, or there's actually a table control for us to work with in here, where we can have different columns of data that we can come in here and sort and we can work with and just see the records from the past or over time.
Gotcha.
So if we want to see that, just go ahead and click on it. We can see some details.
And that's a modern control also. So it is in preview at the time of this recording at least. So hopefully it gets more and more.
Yeah, there's certain things that feel a little buggy from time to time, but for the general part about this modern table, it works really well. I like it a lot. It looks really cool. It looks
like Excel.
Yeah, it looks really great, especially the first time you added in, like, where did this come from?
Right,
I wish it was here the whole time.
Now, where should we put our actual form to enter new data?
Yeah, I think that would probably lend itself somewhere down below, right? If we add that in somewhere here, and I like using containers, so we'll definitely try to use containers a lot in this. Okay. So to keep everything set in its nice little neat little area, and we can control a lot of the objects as one in there. So then what we could do is we can put a form, and inside the form, all we're having are some inputs. So we can have all the different columns or different fields inputted in here one way or the other. Maybe we have like a date picker, or hour, minute, we have weight, we have height, we have status. We could also do some drop downs and all that good stuff. And then at some point, we're probably going to have to put like a button to like save or send or clear, cancel or something like that down there too.
Gotcha. And that button would then route you back to the previous screen probably, so you can do your next evaluation.
Yeah, exactly.
And I imagine if you tap one of those records up top, ideally, we can edit that record in case somebody made a mistake.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I put it for Johnny and not Jackie or whatever.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to just click on this, and then all that data gets populated in all of the fields here as well. So if I want to edit a previous one to make sure I'm doing the right thing and having for the right person, we could just select the record, and there it shows up as
That's awesome. So one form to serve them all.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect.
Awesome. Well, let's show a picture of what that looks like. So as you can see next to us right now, there's a picture of the complete app that you'll be building today. John's going to come back and walk us through all that. We're going to create some tables first for John, create some views and forms, and the model-driven app. But When John comes back, you're going to build the application that we're kind of alluding to right now. So John, thanks so much for kind of brainstorming with us today.
Yeah.
And we'll come back and see the final product.
Ready to have some fun? Let's get building.
Okay, welcome back. This is our first development work you're going to be doing today. And I am joined today with Nate. Nate is one of our main hackathon guys that works on hackathons and virtual mentoring. And Nate, today we're going to work on creating our project for Potter's House. We're going to create a single table, so we're going to keep it simple.
Okay.
The other tables have already been imported in. But where do we start when we're building a Power App solution?
It's a good question, Brian. So before we ever do anything, if we're building a Dataverse solution, you said it right there in the word we want to build a
I was trying to
solution.
avoid saying that word. Yep.
But before we even do that, kind of step zero is we need to make sure we're in the right environment. We're building where we want to build this solution. So first step, always make sure, again, up in the top right, make sure you're where you want to be for today's hackathon. We are in Potter's House dev environment, which is perfect. So what we want to do now, step one, is to actually create a solution where we're going to put all the components that make up this project that we're building together.
So you're mentioning solution. Why do I want to do a solution for Power Apps, Power Automate, chatbots, whatever? Why are solutions important?
Solutions are so important because they organize everything that goes together, and it makes it really easy to port that thing you've built. I'm trying to avoid saying the word solution too, but to port that solution from one environment to another. As you can see, we are in a dev environment right now, so this is kind of a dedicated place for us to try things out, make sure it works, and then eventually we're going to need to move all of those components over to the production environment where they're actually going to be used. Solutions makes that really easy to do, and it packages everything up together.
So we're doing Dataverse today, and so we're going to start with a solution, but again, even if you're not doing Dataverse, solutioning makes sense. Where do we start for solutioning?
So on the homepage of powerapps.com, on the left-hand panel, you'll see solutions.
Okay.
You should always see solutions. If you don't, for any reason, just come down here to more, and this will show you all the potential options on that left-hand navigation. You can see we have solutions pinned, but if you don't, that's where it'll be.
Cool. All right, so we're going to create a sample solution together. Now, they've already imported a solution with Matt in an earlier little section today. However, we're going to create a simple one together. We'll call it like delete me or something so we know it's bogus. Okay. But that will kind of show them how to do that, the kind of operations behind it, and then we'll create a dummy publisher also. But and we'll talk about publishers and solutions as we do that. So let's create one, just a sample one that we can delete later.
Sounds good. So up here at the very top left of your screen, we're just going to tell Power Apps we want to create a new solution. Then over on the right, we're going to get this flyout panel here, and this is where we're going to give our solution a display name. It's also going to give it a logical name, which we'll talk about here in a bit, and then we'll have to select a publisher, which we'll also talk about here in just a second. So since we're just doing a quick, dummy solution here just to show everyone how it's done, we'll just call this delete me.
Okay.
And you can see as I'm typing the letters, it's going to automatically give a logical name with no spaces and no special characters. So you really don't have to worry about creating the name of the solution, just focus on the display name.
Now I see that publisher right there. What is a publisher and why do I need one? Let's try creating a new one, but why do I need this publisher?
So a publisher is what's going to uniquely identify the things that you've built in this solution. So one good example that I like to tell during our in-a-day classes when I go over this is when I very first started building Power Apps, I didn't know about environments and solutions. I used to be a recruiter in a former life, so I was in the HR environment at this company I worked at, and I didn't know about solutions, so I created a table one time called candidates in order to track the progress of candidates that I was working with, and I wanted to store things like their name and email address and everything you'd want to store about candidates, right? Well, unbeknownst to me, there was another recruiter in a different part of the firm that was also getting their feet wet with Power Apps, and they had also created a table called candidates.
Ah, gotcha.
So I never knew which stuff belonged to me and the project I was working on, and what stuff belonged to that other recruiter who happened to name things in a similar manner. So publishers, again, it's what's going to uniquely identify everything you build inside of this solution things like apps and tables and flows.
It also tells you who is the point of contact if something goes bump in the middle of the night, too.
Exactly.
I also I like to keep solutions at either a department level or a company level. The temptation is to create a Nate publisher, but it should not be. It should be Nate's recruiting or whatever it might be. Our Pragmatic Works, and that's what we did. We created a solution, a publisher for you that you imported to call it Pragmatic Works, and everything's going to belong to that. But let's keep on going. Let's see what it looks like.
All right, so as you can see on the drop down here, we might have a couple ones. Now you'll see some default publishers in every new environment. You never want to choose one of those default publishers. So we're going to go ahead and create our very own custom publisher.
Okay.
So when we click on that new publisher button, we get the second flyout panel. And this display name is saying, okay, what are you going to call your publisher? So let's go ahead and call this Delete Me.
Okay. Let's do delete space me, just to kind of mess things up a little bit.
Sure. Delete space me.
Okay.
Now, it does require us to type in an actual logical name this time. It's not going to give it to us automatically. So I'll call it Delete Me with no spaces. Would you like me to add a space?
No, yeah, you try it if you like.
Okay, we'll try to add a space here. So delete space me. And the important thing here is the prefix. So this is what's going to prefix every object that you build in a solution that uses this publisher in the future. For example, if I make a table now called candidates, the prefix here is what's going to prefix my table name.
Okay.
And you'll see a preview of that down below. So for the prefix, I'm just going to do DEL, which stands for delete.
Yeah, so it would be DEL_candidates. You would see that in things like Power BI for reporting, inside of even Management Studio if you want to do queries against the tables directly also. So it's kind of, this is all your logical names will have that, especially in Power Automate. You'll see it quite a bit there also.
Yeah. Yes.
Cool. All right, so we made a mistake on purpose. Let's see what happens.
So I'll try to save this publisher, and it's going to let me know I have some invalid characters somewhere along the way. So I'm going to just remove this space in the name.
And if you want to, you can also go to the Contact tab up top and put your contact information and all that. That's just more for finding a point of contact if something goes bump in the night. We're not going to do it right now. It's not important right now.
All right, so let's try to save this now. Now we'll give it a second. We'll see that panel goes away, but we're still in the process of creating our new solution. But now we've created a new publisher that can go along with this solution. And we see it right here in the drop-down list. There's the Delete Me publisher. And then all we have to do is click create.
Awesome. Now there's one more thing, I get a constant question about on that publisher was the choice prefix also. It's this big number. Just for those that are asking the question in the chat window right now, that is basically every drop-down box you have, which is a choice column with like Florida, Georgia, Alabama, United States, South Africa, whatever. They'll have an auto number assigned to that. So if your choice prefix was 1,000, then it'll be 1001 for Florida, 1002 for Georgia, and so on. So just a way of uniquely identifying choice lists. I'm sure we're getting that question in the chat window right now. So just to head that off. All right, so we've created our sample stuff now. Now, if they are trying to move stuff from environment to environment, you'll see that add existing, that's not in a publisher, they can go to add existing and add that old stuff in there, right?
Yeah. Anything that you could build from within a solution, you can also pull into a solution if it's out there.
Cool. Well, let's go to our solution they imported with Matt earlier, and let's go ahead and add a table to an existing solution.
Sounds great.
And in that existing solution, folks, you're going to see a lot of stuff as Nate goes there. That solution was called Potters. I forget what it was called. Would you mind going back and let's take a look at what it was called?
So if we want to exit this solution, over here on the left, you'll see this purple arrow here. So we'll
Good catch there. I'm glad you caught that.
And then in solutions, it looks like we have something called Potter's House Treasure System.
All right, cool. So we'll go there, and you're going to see all the objects that I've already created for you. But we're going to do one together right now, and then later we're going to do things like views and forms on that with Matt. But let's go ahead and now what they want to track here in this case are a list of incidences, usually like a discipline incident, like a student in the United States would be way worse than here, but student may have gotten in a fight, or student to talk to teacher, ask the teacher, or whatever it might be, right? Okay. So we want to track those on a student record, on treasure record, right? So we're going to somehow relate that to the student in this case.
Okay. So should we call a table that stores information like that? We're tracking incidents, right? So maybe we'll just call the table incident.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Now I noticed you went singular there.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, sounds okay. Let's do that.
So now we don't have a table called incident out there. So we're going to go ahead and add a new object. So right here, when you click on new, you'll see all the different types of objects that you can build from within this solution. Things like apps, automations. We want to build a new table to store some data. You'll see we have two options here. We can just do a table, and that's saying a Dataverse table. Or if you already have a table somewhere else and you just want to kind of create a Dataverse virtual table, you can choose table from external data. But
So that'd be like for like external data, be like SQL Server or SharePoint or Salesforce.com, and to name a few examples.
exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
So we're just going to do a regular old Dataverse table. And then this panel comes out from the right side again, kind of like with our solutions and our publishers. And now we need to name our table. And Brian alluded to a good point before when I was thinking of what to call this table, and I wanted to call it incident because it's going to be tracking incidents. Well, that's your first lesson of the day. If you learn nothing else from my session today, whenever you create a new table, always make your table name singular. It's automatically going to apply a plural name to your table anyways. So since we're tracking incidents, I'm going to name my table incident. And you'll see that it assigns a plural name here. And it is smart enough to, if you were creating a table called mouse, it will change it to mice or goose or geese.
So we talked about not to do it. Well, why do they not want to create a table here called incidents?
We'll see that in the next step of this. I don't want to get too far ahead of the game here, but basically when you create a table, it's also going to create a unique identifier column for every record in that table. And the name of that column, that unique identifier column, is going to be the same thing as the display name for your table. So let's pretend for a second here that I called this display name incidents. It has no problem with that. It will let me save the table. But now I've got a table called incidents. I have a plural name called incidents, and I have a unique identifier column also called incidents. So when you get to a point where you're trying to build apps on top of this table or Power Automate flows, you're never going to know
Which one is it?
And Power Apps and Power Automate is never really going to know whether you're referencing the table or the unique identifier column.
So for the time being, we'll put that in the category of just trust us.
Yeah, just trust us.
It's a nightmare to build with plural names down the road, especially in Power Automate, and Canvas apps also are a nightmare with that.
I think they've gotten better over time, but it's still really tricky.
So we have our table name. Now this is they may want to log like things like photos and notes about what the parent conference appointments and those kind of things about this. Can I do that on a table like this?
You can. Yeah, there's a couple advanced settings we'll have to take a look at here, but if you click advanced options, I guess before we even click advanced options, the enable attachments part, this is what allows you to upload documents against a record in this table. So things like a photo or things like
a video,
a report,
maybe,
a video. I always err on the side of don't check this box until you know you want to enable attachments. You can always come back to a table later and turn this off, but once this is turned on,
you can turn it on, but you can't turn it off, right?
Yeah, once this is checked, you can never come back and turn it off, but you can always come back and turn it on. So I always leave this unchecked until I'm absolutely sure I want to upload attachments. Now, what you were talking about was maybe you want to log activities against a record in this table. For example, you might want to have a meeting with a parent or an email to the teacher or something of those sorts.
Yeah, or log photos or a video of a fight that may have happened or those kind of things, yeah.
So for things like that, we would go to the advanced options. And you can see we can do a lot of stuff here in this advanced options, like we can change who owns the records, whether it's a user or team or the entire organization. And we can also make this table an option when logging a new activity. So if we check that box, that will allow us to get access to something called the timeline, which you might see. And
we're definitely going to use that later. Yeah,
later today.
We'll definitely want those notes, attachments, and all that. So yeah, let's just turn those two options on then. And then the activities will be things like appointments, phone calls, faxes, those kind of things. And then up top, you mentioned the other one, which would be like store our notes and our attachments up there. So we'll turn on both those settings for the time being. And we'll definitely use that in our forum later.
Okay.
All right, cool. That's good. Is there anything else we want to do? And there's a whole bunch more settings, obviously, here. But we only have a few hours together, so we'll skip those settings, and you can get our other Canvas, our Dataverse class, to see more on that also. All right. So what's this primary column we see up top also?
So everything we've just done are just properties of the table, but there's one more thing that's really important that we have to do before we click Save.
Okay.
So over in the primary column, every table in Dataverse has a primary column. And this is how humans talk to other humans about records in a table. If you've ever built a SharePoint list, think of this as the title column.
Okay.
So the primary column is always going to be called name. So the name of each record in a table. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So for example, if I had a table to store my projects, having my primary column be called name might make sense because I have a project and that project has a name.
Right.
But in this case, how would you name an incident in a way that I could talk to you about it?
Probably some kind of auto number of some sort, I imagine, like an incident number or something that just kind of generates a random number. Would make most sense, right? So
I would agree. It's easier for me to go to you and say, hey, can you look up incident number 501 rather than me go to you and say, hey, can you look up this incident from this student on this day? It's hard to name this record. So I'm going to change the name of my primary column to reflect that. So rather than calling this name, I'm going to call this something like incident number.
Perfect.
You can always come back and change the display name of your primary column later, but you're never going to be able to change the logical name unless you do it right now.
So, you said logical name a few times. Let's take a quick time out on that. Logical name is it's the name behind the scenes that the actual name is. So if you're a Power BI person, this is the name that's going to show up in Power BI. Or you'll use Power Automate, and you can use it in some of the coding languages also, and Power Effects, for example. You could use it there if you wanted to also, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would recommend if you don't change the name of this primary column right now, you should leave it alone after you create the table. But
yeah, the only way to really change the logical name is to delete the column and re-add it again, or delete the table in this case.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're good, right? We've got all our properties set up the way we want.
We have attachments. We got a primary column. And I assume that's going to be an auto number. We're good to go.
Well, kind of, yes and no. Eventually it will be an auto number, but we have to do some extra steps. But we have to create the table first before we can do any of that.
All right, let's do that then first. And this table creation, when Nate hits save, it could take a few seconds for it to do its thing, because it's actually physically creating a table behind the scenes in SQL Server.
So let's click save and see what happens.
That wasn't 30 seconds at all. It was actually pretty fast. Now, when you guys do it, we have thousands of people all hitting the save button at the same time right now in this event. So it might slow Microsoft down for a few seconds.
All right, so now we are still in our solution, but we're a couple layers deep inside of our solution. And you can always tell where you're at the very top of your screen. You'll have this breadcrumb trail to show where you are. So we're in the treasure system solution. And within that solution, we're in the tables. And within the tables, we are looking at this incident table that we just created.
And this feels like SharePoint down below, kind of creating a view in SharePoint or a list in SharePoint, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a very similar experience.
So I see you can create columns here, but there's probably a way that you like to create columns also outside of this also, right? You have two ways of doing it.
Yeah, as you can see, we've already got a few columns here that we didn't create. So some metadata columns that get automatically created for us. I could go over here and just start creating columns, but I always like to go, and look at every single column that I have. So there's two ways to get there. We can either, in the schema, go to columns right here, or we can expand this incident table on the left and select columns right there.
Sweet.
So this will show us every single column on this table. And as you can see, there's a bunch of them, and we didn't create any of them. So that's where we're going to use our publisher prefix to help us out a little bit. Let's just say I want to only focus on my custom columns right now, the things that I've created. I didn't create any of these, so I don't really care.
Right. So Microsoft has stuff like when the record was created, when it was modified, who did it, all that stuff is all nice,
yes,
but not stuff we need more developing.
Exactly. Yep. So I like to kind of de-muddy the waters here. And yet, as you can see, we've got the display name, which is all the display names of our columns, and then we've got the name of all our columns. And you can see it looks a little different, right? So this created by looks nice, there's a space in there, but then the actual name, there's no space.
Okay.
So this is the, as I will say one more time, the logical name of this column. And since now we know about publishers and kind of what they do, if we go up to this name column, we can filter by only columns that contain our publisher prefix, and that will show us all of our custom stuff.
Yeah, and ours in this case is PW, is our publisher prefix for the solution they imported in. So if they type in PW, hit apply, hopefully. There we go. Now I see 2 columns here right now. You mentioned that incident column up front. What does that one do?
So this is called the GUID column or GUID column or unique identifier. So every single record that gets created in this table will have like a 36 character hexadecimal, field.
That's more system used.
Exactly.
That's not how humans communicate.
This is how the systems communicate to other systems about records.
Gotcha.
So we're never going to do that.
Yeah, so you can actually look in the URL and see ID equals that number right there, and that's how you can kind of track down the record that you're looking at.
Exactly.
Cool. And then the other one,
Now this one,
I recognize that one.
yeah, this is our primary column. So this is how humans talk to other humans about records. And remember, it's going to give you a little tag right here saying that this is the primary name column.
Okay.
And right now, the data type is a single line of text.
Okay, got a problem there?
We do. Yeah, you said you wanted to do some sort of auto
I think an auto number would be great, yeah.
Yeah, so rather than doing a single line of text, a primary column is one of the only types of columns that you can go back and change the data type after the fact. And there's only 2 options for us for what type of data it can be. So if you click on that, the name of that field, incident number, or you can click the ellipses and go to edit. This will open up the column on the right,
Okay.
and we can update some properties. So the data type here, rather than being single line of text, there it is.
Auto number, sweet. Oh, what? That just blew my mind. So we have a whole bunch more at the bottom here now because you did that. So what do we see at the bottom here?
Yeah, so different data types have different parameters or different requirements that go along with them. So in auto number, we have some new options here. We can set the auto number type, whether we want to do just a string prefix number or a date, or we can do our own custom prefixes. Cool. We can set what we want that prefix to be. So, for example, since I think that's good.
So prefixes are optional, but in my case, you can see at the bottom there now that we see things like I-1000, I-1001. So every new incident will have a little letter qualifier. So why would we ever want to do a prefix like that?
Because if we don't do a prefix, then records in this table will just be called 1000, 1001, 1002. And right now we have an incident table. What if in the future we have another table to track other things about what's happening with the student? And those could have, 1000, 1001, 1002. So I like to just be a little more specific about the table that I'm on.
So kind of classifying your numbers.
Yeah.
So I look at it as, I had a project a while ago where we had an application system for a county government. And they had business applications and they had individual applications. So when a citizen called and they said, hey, I'm calling about B1000, the call center rep knew they were calling about a business application, so they can go and pull that up in the right system at that point.
Nice.
So yeah, so we're going to do I in our prefix. Okay, cool.
And you can also set the minimum number of digits and the seed value.
Okay.
And you can play around with those to, it'll give you the preview to show you what that looks like down below. These are the defaults, so I'm going to stick with them for now. So let's click Save.
Sounds good.
Now we have an auto numbering column.
Now we're going to only do a few columns right now, maybe 4 or 5 columns, but obviously in the real world you'd have a lot more. And you'll see in the real world, in some of the other tables, there are a lot more columns on those. But we're going to kind of keep this one more abbreviated and just try to show you different examples here. So first thing I can think of, we want to see a description or something like that of what happened. So
exactly.
So let's go ahead and create some more columns.
So up here in the top left, now because we're in the columns section of the incident table in this solution, the buttons up here change as well. So now rather than creating a new table or creating a new app, we're in the columns, so we can create a new column. So click on that, and now we get to name our column. So you said something like a description of what happened. Yeah. So I'll just call this description.
Perfect.
Do you want a description on the description column?
Now that description right there could come into play later in things like Power Pages and all that. You can also expose it in other apps as well, but we're going to keep it simple today. We'll make everything as optional today also. Normally you would have this as required likely, but we're going to keep it as optional. And where would they go to make something required?
So if we wanted to make this field required, we could go down here to the bottom and set this to either required or business recommended.
Gotcha. Recommend is just, hey, I think you really should do this. And required is, no, you have to do this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So we're going to leave it as everything's optional today as you're playing along so that way you can test this a lot more frequently here. All right, now we mentioned, I can imagine that an incident description might be a little long. So what do we do to actually accommodate that?
So rather than doing a single line of text, why don't we do multiple lines of text?
Okay, sounds good.
So on the data type right here, if we go down, here's all the different data types you can do. And as you can see, there's arrows next to some of them. So there's even, subcategories. So this is going to be text. And if you go over here to this arrow, here's all the different types of text it could be.
Okay.
We could do plain text, single line. We could do a text area, rich text. But we want to come all the way down here to the bottom, and we want to allow for multiple lines of text. And let's just stick with plain text.
That sounds good. Yeah. Cool.
And then save.
That looks awesome. So what else can you think of we might need in this kind of table then?
Well, I think we need to know when it happened.
Yeah, we'll have a create date, but that may be different than the actual incident date.
Exactly.
So yeah, it makes sense. Let's go ahead and create a column for that.
Okay. So new column. And we'll call this, what do we want to call this?
The incident date, maybe something. I'm not feeling very creative right now. You go for it. You do you.
Incident date sounds great. So we know that this is going to be a date column. So we'll come down here to date and time. And you can see we have two options here for date columns. Date and time or date only.
Let's go date only if we can show some extra stuff here.
Okay.
So in reality, you might have date and time for this. Like this occurred at 9 o'clock, but we're going to keep it simple today and do date only. Yeah.
Sounds good. But on the back end, remember how systems talk to other systems. Even though we set this to be date only, if we want this to truly be date only, there's one more step we have to take.
Yeah, because it's going to store midnight, right? And it's like, what midnight at what time zone? So it's that kind of stuff that causes problems.
Exactly. So the user will only see a date, but on the back end, in the actual SQL table, there is going to be a timestamp with this date only field of 00000.
Right.
So if you want to change that and you want a truly date only field, if you come down here to advanced options and take a look at the time zone adjustment, right now it's set to time zone independent, but we can set this to just date only here.
Gotcha. So now it's really going to truly strip the time out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll save that.
Okay, so we have our date. I'm trying to think of what I would want to know. I want to know, all right, we know the description, we know when it happened. What did the teacher do, or what do we do to resolve this, probably? So how do we do like maybe a drop-down box of ways of resolution?
Okay. So we can do choice column, how about?
Okay. So choice column, and you're saying choice, it's similar to what we have inside of things like SharePoint, just a drop-down box.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we'll do a new column. What do you want to call this? Resolution?
Yeah, that sounds good.
And the data type here, we'll do a choice. And you see we can do a custom choice here or just a yes or no.
Let's do choice, yeah.
So as soon as we click choice, we get a bunch of options here. First one is, do we want to sync this with a global choice?
What does that mean?
So what that means is in Dataverse, there's already a bunch of tables out there and a bunch of list of choices to choose from. And if an option set is global, meaning it's available to be used by other tables in this environment, we'll be able to just use one of those option sets. So just to show this, I don't think we're gonna go with that for this table, but if we wanna sync this with a globally available choice list, this drop down here will show us all of the option sets that already exist in Dataverse.
So things like states or maybe months of the year, those kind of things that you're commonly using, statuses like rejected, approved, pending, those all make sense being global choices. In this case, I can't see us using this outside this one table. So it probably makes sense just keeping it local then.
So then we don't want to sync this with a global choice. So say no, and now we can build those list of choices right here in this table.
Okay.
So for this first one, what would we call? What are some different?
We might meet the parents, and we'll just do a few of them here, but maybe we met the parent conference, or we want to call it. It doesn't really matter, guys, what you call these. We're just going to do a few here just to kind of get the gist of things. Maybe we suspended the child. And then what else would you do? Maybe a parent note, maybe.
Okay.
And then expulsion would be bad. The worst one here, I guess.
Okay.
Now we can also, I see little color palettes next to each of these also.
Yeah.
Those can be used in things like views later and also in forms later. So can we make a few of those just kind of have some nice color to it? How do we do that?
Absolutely. So you just click on that little icon right there, and we can set whatever we want the color to be. So a parent conference, that's pretty light, pretty
Chill,
tame.
yeah.
So maybe we'll go with nice blue.
Okay.
Suspension, that's not the
not
best.
good, yeah, maybe yellow
but I see
or
some
orange.
worse options on there, so maybe we'll go with orange for that one.
Okay.
Parent note, that's like really chill, so maybe we'll go with green.
And a few notes while Nate is doing this, a few notes on this. You generally want to go a more pastel, lighter color. We're going a little dark right now, but there is some custom code that you can use in Views that will put the words expulsion on top of that red color. And as you can imagine, that black text on that dark red right there might be a little hard to see. So the forms will look good, but the views might have a little issue. So as you're doing this, just consider making it as light, kind of pastel Easter colors as you can on that.
Good point.
Beautiful. All right.
All right, so we'll save that. What else do we want to know with this table?
Well, we need enough. I'm thinking if I was a principal, I'd want to report against the number of severity, number of issues that were high level severity and then low level severity. So there's going to be some kind of severity drop down box also. So it's kind of standardized.
Yeah, let's do the same exact thing we just did with the last column, but we'll just change the choices.
All right, sounds good.
So we'll call this severity.
Okay. Maybe just choices this time of like low, medium, and severe.
Sure.
Some of that.
Yeah.
Just for reporting, I think, more than anything.
So again, I'm not going to sync this globally.
And while he's typing this low, medium, and severe in, feel free to color these however you want also. Feel free to pause us, of course, and as you're kind of doing these, color them however you want, because they will come into play later if you want to have that pretty color on your views and your forms. You won't see that color in Canvas applications necessarily without some little bit of lift, but on the module side, it's very easy. And that's why we installed that second module before we installed a second solution. And that was for color coding the choices. That looks great. Should we maybe put a default choice in this as well? Maybe something like low as a default or medium or something
that's
like
good.
that. Yeah.
Let's do a default choice of low.
All right, sounds good. The only other column is one major column I'm thinking we're missing here, and that is we have no idea what student or treasure this is for.
Okay.
So we probably need to create a column called treasure and somehow find a way to link this record to the actual treasure.
Okay. How would you do that in SQL?
I would do a join, like a foreign key kind of thing, and then SharePoint has these things called lookups. SQL Server has foreign key relationships. So what would it be here?
I would definitely go with the lookup.
All right.
Dataverse has lookups as well. So
Gotcha. So they have tried to create an environment where a SharePoint administrator can easily come over to Dataverse.
Yeah.
And as you can see, guys, this is the coolest part. This is easy, right? This is not as difficult as it is doing. I grew up in the SQL Server front, right?
Yeah.
And doing what we've done in the web environment here is mountains easier.
And what we're doing is, behind the scenes, like up front, it looks easy. We're just creating a lookup column. But behind the scenes, it's generating that many-to-one relationship to whatever table we set, and it's going to store that entire record inside of this table. So it's really, really cool feature here. So we're just going to call this treasure, I think is what you called the students. And so the data type here is going to be a lookup.
Awesome.
Now, we have two options here. We're just going to go with a standard lookup this time.
Okay.
Now it just needs to know, okay, which table has the information that you want to look up to? So where are you storing the treasures?
I'm storing them in context table
Gotcha.
as a standard table.
So then the related table is going to be the contact table. And you can type into here in order to search.
Way easier. Yeah.
I highly recommend it. So there's our contact table. We'll click on that. And as soon as I hit save, it's going to generate that relationship. behind the
Awesome.
scenes for
And we can even see that relationship in the relationship section on the left side also, right?
You can, yeah. What, do you want to see that? Or?
Yeah, let's take a look real quick. So you'll notice that you can create relationships like many-to-many relationships, mention many-to-one, all those kind of things. And we're going to see that right here somewhere. Probably a column called treasure somewhere in here as you scroll down to the bottom probably. We're in the R's right now. Ooh. Now all those regardings are because Nate checked the note attachment in the type of activities. But there we go. There's your treasure, many-to-one. Nice. But you can also create new relationships up top if you wanted to as well. So as you can see, creating tables in Dataverse is super easy. Whether you're a project manager, a developer, a data guy, it doesn't really matter anymore. They've democratized it to where anybody can do it. If you can build an Excel spreadsheet, you can build a Dataverse table. So Nate, thanks for playing with me today on this. Again, one of the classes that I'd recommend as a next step is the Dataverse class in our on-demand platform. It goes way more depth on all creating tables and relationships, the business rules and all that. And don't forget, if you use the code POTTERS40 today, it will get you 40% off our on-demand platform, and you get $40 over to Potter's House to help other kids that are in need there of their services. Thanks, Nate, for playing with us today. Now we're ready to start building our app next.
Thanks so much for having me. Good luck, everyone.
All right, we're back again with Matt Peterson, and Matt is going to walk us through taking the work of that Nate did earlier around creating those tables in that solution and expanding it to where we can actually do something with that. Yeah. So Matt, we're going to create a model-driven app today, right?
Yep, model-driven app, very different from a Canvas app, more for your back office applications, but the usability is what I love about it, and the simplicity of creating it. It's a lot quicker to create a model-driven app than a Canvas app.
So we'll be able to build that app in maybe 10 minutes?
I think so, just for the pre-baked out of the oven. We'll see what it can do, and then we're going to go and definitely make some tweaks to it.
Awesome, I'm excited. So what's our first step? We have our solution now created. We've got a table created now with thanks to Nate's help. So what is our first step when we open up the solution to do something?
Yeah, well, the first step is, let's go into our solution because we want to create everything inside of our solution. So we just open up our Potter's House Treasure System solution. We can see everything is organized over on the left in our objects panel. Like if I click on tables here, I can say, just show me the tables. And one thing I always just like to do just for review here. So here's our incident table. So I'm going to click on the incident table. And then if I come up to the top, right up here, I've got columns. Now, there's a lot of ways to get to the same place. We don't want to keep you here for 8 hours. So I'm going to go to just one way only throughout today. So I'm going to click on columns at the top here. And what you can see are all the columns that were created for this incident table. Now, sometimes it's overwhelming because you're just really concerned with the custom columns that you've created. So a nice little trick here. You're going to thank me for this. If you hit this name column in the column view, if you hit that drop down and you go to your filter by, notice that we have our publisher prefix of PW. So I go to filter by and I just type in PW here and then I apply it. Now we can see just our custom columns. So it's a great way to get yourself re-familiar with the columns if you forgot what they were. And we can see this is going to be a big one for us, our incident number, which is being auto-numbered. It's going to come up later in a bit in our form. So that's how you go investigate your columns. Now, you could start to make your forms. You could start to make your views. But I want to show you just what comes out of the box when you just go make the model-driven app. It's not going to satisfy our needs today. Okay. We're going to come back and we're going to modify some things. But like we said, you said 10 minutes, we'll get the app done. We'll get most of the app done in 10 minutes.
So you said forms and views. Forms to enter the data, views to see the data, and then an app. So we're going to start the opposite way, though, and do app first.
Yeah, we're going to reverse engineer this kind of here. So now, let's just go make this application. So the way we do that is you need to be anywhere in your solution, but on a table itself. So I usually that's just my default thing. I come up here to the All section. And then right up here at the top where it says New, we're going to click on New. We're going to go down to App. And again, what we are making here for this video is we're making the model-driven application. So we're going to call this the model-driven app here. Now, every model-driven app needs a name. So Brian, what are you thinking you want the name of this app to be?
Let's just call it maybe Potter's House Back Office.
I like it.
And we do have this complete app already in the solution as well. So this will be our second app we're creating that we have as part of our installation.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to call it the Potter's House Back Office and then come right on down. You can always give yourself a description if you want. But really, we just hit the create here. And what a model-driven app does is it creates a template. So you work inside of a template. It's not like a Canvas where you have complete flexibility and control. You add controls, you do whatever you want. You work within a template. And so what you'll notice here over on the left-hand side, this is where we're going to add what we call the pages to the app. These are the different areas that we want our users to go to access the data, to see it in our views, to create and edit our data in the forms. Well, right now, we don't have any pages whatsoever.
Right.
So, and we got lots of tables that we want to add. So what we're going to do is to add these pages to the application. So we're going to click on, it's a button that's just begging to get clicked, right, Brian?
In the center is like our preview anyways, right? So
exactly.
Once we have our first stuff, we'll be
able to start seeing something.
All right,
so we're going to come on down and we're going to click on Add Page. And then the pages that we're adding are the Dataverse tables. Now there's other types of pages you can add into your apps, but for the main data viewing, the main data creation, the editing, you're going to go with Dataverse tables because that's going to bring everything that came with Dataverse and bring it right over into the application.
Now, a few things to note here. Yes, it is a Dataverse tables, but Dataverse does support the addition of things like SQL Server, SharePoint, and other data sources like those. And you'll also see a Canvas page in there as well. This is allowing us to kind of blend in Canvas elements into a model-driven application and really add that extra zing to our app.
Yep, all like one big hub for us to go to, not
Right.
multiples. I love those. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to come on over here and we're going to click on Add these Dataverse tables. And now we have lots of tables. You probably have lots of tables in your environment. So we have a lot of tables that we're going to add to this app. And we're going to put up here all the tables that you want to add. I'm going to quickly start to search for them and add them in here. So right up here at the top, we're going to search. One of the first ones we're going to need is we are going to need our account table.
That's where we're storing all the churches and all the volunteer companies that are contributing to Potter's House.
Now, the account table, did you make that table?
I did not. It's a built-in table with the count and contacts. They're both built-in tables to Dataverse.
Okay, so it's just comes like a whole bunch of data, like a whole bunch of columns that you can just enter in information
Yeah,
about?
it has tons of columns in there, but if you're looking at storing things like companies or people, you want to use contacts for people and accounts for companies. So ideally, don't go through and recreate the wheel. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. The main reason, one of my main reasons is at least it lets me go eventually into things like Power Pages and build those because all the security systems are going to be based on contacts
right.
and accounts.
All right.
All right,
So
so
we're
we
gonna
get a
go
whole
with
bunch
our-
here, don't we?
a
We have
whole
account.
bunch. So we're gonna go account.
So we have contact, I know.
We're going to go contact. And so as you're doing this and searching, because you don't want to scroll through the whole thing, it honors your check. So don't worry about when you search for your next table, it's going to honor that check. So we want our contact, we want our account. We also want our academic evaluation. Let me start searching it this way.
And again, that list will be on the side of us right now, the list of all the tables you'll check. So pause this, feel free to pause it, and you'll also find it in the class notes as well.
All right, then we're going to go health evaluation. We're going to go with our contributions. And click on that. And then we're also going to go with our program attendance.
Okay.
This is going to be a fully fledged out app here, Brian. Tracking a lot of stuff. I love it.
But the cool thing is, while you're checking these, I built these tables in an hour or two. So this is part of what we do in a hackathon. Hackathons are all about delivering results really, really quickly. And with Dataverse, you really can do that.
Yeah, thankfully, I'm not a DBA person, so you asked me to make those tables in SQL. I don't even know what to do, but Dataverse, I know how to use it.
Okay, guardian of your parents in this case.
And then we got our incident.
Okay.
That's going to be the one that we're going to focus on in this module here.
Okay.
And then finally, we have two more. We've got our grade table.
And then our user table, right?
And finally, our user table.
Okay. That's where we're going to store the teachers and those kind of folks. The user table, just so you guys know, holds a list of anybody that has a license in your particular environment. So in Matt's environment, it will be a list of all the users that have those licenses.
All right, perfect.
All right.
And now, obviously, we want to make sure we show this in the navigation because we're going to want our users to be able to come here. But you can add tables and not put it in the navigation because you might want to use it for other reference points.
Okay.
Right?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to add these on over here.
Now, Matt, that looks like a lot of tables on the left there.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah,
It's quite
can
a
we
bit.
compartmentalize those somehow?
I think we can. I think we do that with what are called groups.
And by the way, your app is essentially built.
It is.
And
it
that
is.
was less than 10 minutes.
I think we were honest on that. Keep us honest, YouTubers. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we got it done in 10 minutes.
And that middle section is your app. So it will look we'll make it look a lot cleaner, a lot prettier, but this is the core.
That's it. So, for example, you said something before we get into the grouping action. Let me just focus on this first. You told me when we were building this that the accounts. So right over here, I've clicked on accounts in the page navigation, but we're not really we know it's the account table, but you're referring to them as something else. So we don't
Well,
want to confuse
Potter's
the
House
users?
refers to more to like companies and churches. These are like volunteer companies and organizations that come and spend a week with them to build a school potentially or build a home or whatever. So then we call that, if we can find a way to call that, like churches and companies.
Churches and companies. All right, so I've got the accounts selected over here, and I could select it over the navigation panel as well. We'll come over here in a little bit. But if I come over to the far right-hand side and I click on settings, right here where it says title. So this is where I can change the display name of the table in the app, but not the actual, name of the table.
Gotcha.
So we decided to call this what? Companies
And churches.
Churches.
Perfect.
And let me get rid of that mouse there, y'all. So companies and churches. Then all I got to do is a little click away here, and now we see it's called companies and churches. So that's how you can rename your tables.
That's awesome. I see an icon underneath it. You can also set the icon to be something different if you wish down the road. Right now we're fine, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Also.
All right. So I don't think there's any others in here that we want to change the name of.
I think it's fine.
I think it's fine, but I like your idea. Too much, too quick. Let's group these out. So one way to do this is up here on the far left. We're just basically going to kind of compartmentalize these.
Okay.
So if I come up here where it says new group and I click on the 3 dots next to it, I can say, you know what? I want to add a new group. As I click on it, you're like, you did the wrong thing, Matt.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. Well, it's a little trick. Not a trick. You just got to know where to go. If I go down all the way to the bottom, we see that it says new group. But we won't see it in the navigation panel till we move something underneath of it. So thinking...
Typically, I call this extra group here configuration. It's like for the admins to go through and configure the app, but the users, the grades, all the lookup tables, all go in there.
Okay.
When I personally build stuff.
Because, again, I think you can control who sees what with security, right?
Right. So if you don't have access to the table, that table will disappear from the listing here also.
All right. So I like that idea. So let's say we want to put users in there.
Yeah, let's put users in there.
So I'm going to hit the 3 dots here next to my users view. And then I'm just going to go right here and just going to move it down. And see immediately when I do that, it puts it in the group.
Unfortunately, you can't drag and drop.
I wish you could drag and drop, but you can't.
Can we change the name from that new group to something a little more
I
appropriate?
think we can, same way. So I've got the group selected over in the Pages navigation. I'll come on over here. And as you mentioned, you like to call this configuration. So I'm going to come over to the title area, type in configuration.
Okay.
And
there it is.
There it is.
Cool. It'll be the same thing for the other group, the other new group if you wanted to also.
Give it a different name for sure. And then is there anything else we want to put in configuration?
I'm gonna bug you here.
Oh,
I always say
no.
grades, but you see the problem here, guys.
I do. Okay.
So we'll start the process, not finish it here, but he'll have to go right click, select the 3 dot, hit down, move down.
Move down. I wish I had a cool song to go with it, but
We can make one.
We could make one.
All right, there we go.
So we'll move it on down, and move it on down.
Here we go.
So now we've got the idea, the structure of the app done, but what does it do? Now we can play the app right here. I don't like to play it in the design mode. Canvas apps are cool, but model driven, I like to save my work, publish that out, and then I like to play it in a separate tab. Do you mind if I do it that way today?
Go ahead,
Brian?
let's try it.
All right. Just because when you're in the design mode, again, you can click on all these buttons, but then you got the left-hand panel, the right-hand panel. So I like to do a save. I'm going to do a publish here.
Okay.
And then finally, I'm going to click a play. Now, this is going to open up a new tab.
Oh, so what you mentioned before is you don't play the center area just for quick peeks and those kind of things, but you don't actually do work in that center area.
I don't.
You hit the play button first.
I love to hit play. I like to, now some people hate having lots of tabs open. This looks cleaner. This is the official. But again, you could preview it back in that designer there. So let's take a look at one thing. We're going to focus on incidents today. You know, when an incident has occurred with a student. Now, if I come on over to incidents to start with, you're going to see we are looking at what is called an active view. This wasn't made for us. It's made by Dataverse, and every active view from a custom table that you make comes with 2 columns. Your created on column and your primary name column. I know we're going to want to see more information.
Yeah, we covered the primary name column in our previous module, so you missed that, please rewind us. That's going to be an important one to go to later. But yeah, those 2 columns don't do us a whole lot of good.
They don't. And then, you know what? Like, I'm ready to make a new incident. I click on new. I got the main form. It's great. It was built for me. I love that. But I already see one big thing, incident number. You know, as y'all set up in that other table, you said incident number is supposed to be auto-numbered.
Right.
I don't want my users typing in their own number here. So, and I want to put in a whole lot more information. So right now, not too good with that. But, you know, let's go over here. So I'm going to go to the contacts table. All right. And so we got a view. I'm fine with that right now, but I want to make a contact.
Could you show us, I see it says My Active Contacts. Is there a way of changing that? Because that's ones that you personally own.
That's correct. And that's where the security comes into place here as well. So these are all the views. You're going to get tons of views with your standard tables that come with Dataverse. But as you're taking a look, what about if you just want to see active contacts?
Okay.
So I'm going to click on active contacts, and these are currently active contacts built in. Now, we have them in this environment because we deployed sample data in this environment. You might not be seeing any sample contacts if you didn't deploy any. Now, active, what does that mean? Is it...
Well, active means basically the record has not been archived, right? It has not been deactivated or archived somehow. So the reports still work if you deactivate a contact, but becomes read-only when you deactivate. And you'll notice a deactivate button up top whenever Matt checks on anything. A deactivate button will light up there where he can kind of archive the record.
So soft delete.
Soft delete, yeah.
Already built into the model-driven app?
Exactly.
So
There's a whole lot more here also, isn't there?
So good. There's a lot more here.
Now we see all the views also. When Matt hit the drop-down box, there was tons of views that you saw there. A few of them that I've created for you are things like the treasures, and there's treasures in different cities. There are also different regions. And there's also ones for sponsors and all sorts of goodies like that. There's also forms for each of those. So later we're going to show you how to remove the extra junk that we don't care about and just leave the good stuff that we do care about.
So why would you make these extra views? Like what makes Guatemala City, San Marcos different from the other one?
Yeah, so it's already been pre-filtered down for you. And the columns have changed also. So we can create n number of those, and your users can also create their own custom views that they want that they can only see. So you'll see that up in the top right. There's a 3 dot there somewhere, I believe. Oh, there it is right there. Yeah, edit columns. So that allows you to kind of create a Matt version of this if you wanted.
Oh.
So Matt, you were going somewhere with this, though, and I apologize.
Yeah, no, you're good. Like I said, model-driven apps have so much functionality just built right in. So if we wanted to make a new contact, so for those of you who don't have any sample contacts, feel free to hit the new up here at the top.
Okay.
Come up with the,
Well, how about we look at, can we hit the drop-down box where it says contact? Let's use a treasure form here. So you'll see that right there, treasure main form. This is the form that we'll be using throughout the few day here.
So this is a special form you made for the contacts.
Exactly.
For this exact idea.
And we're going to make a form in a moment here with Matt and you in a moment here also, and a view. How do we call it? Matt Peterson. How about that?
Yeah, we'll go with Matt Peterson. Why not? And so
we can leave a lot of this out. Maybe put a birth date here just for show and tell here.
Yeah,
on the right there is birthday. And check out what happens whenever he...
Do I give my age, Brian?
Don't do that, no.
Okay, then I'm just going to say...
People just age, man. Don't do that.
That's it.
All right.
Go.
All right. And you'll also see above that contact type. And Matt, let's make this a treasure here. Look at that color right there. That was that first solution that Matt installed in our prerequisites. It kind of gives that little flash of color, so users kind of get trained to go follow the color and not the words.
I like it. And so this column data type, is this a...
It's a choice column.
It's a choice column.
Yeah,
okay.
And we have 2 of those in our table we'll be messing with. So we're going to put the same color in your form that you create in a moment here also. So let's make you a treasure.
All right, we're going to be a treasure.
I guess so.
Going to save and close this. And give it a second.
Okay.
And then, hey, we've made our first record on the contact table. Now, Brian, what I'd really like to do is go and fix our incidents form. We need to make it more robust here. So I'm going to keep this open.
Well, is there any way of seeing the data from Matt Peterson also?
Well, you mean if I click on Matt Peterson here?
Yeah. Can I see the number of incidences that have occurred here?
I see where you're going.
Some options here.
I see where you're going.
Well, I see that related thing up there. Is that anything?
Related? Well, I guess who's Matt Peterson related to? Like my relatives? That's not it. I know. Dumb dad jokes, you're going to get them. But when I click on related, this is going to pull in any table that has a relationship to the contacts table. Now, on our incidents form, we have a lookup column to the contact table. We're saying when we do an incident, who is this incident for? Well, so we would call that our parent table, and the incidents would be the children. And I'm on the parent. I'm like, you know what? What incidents are there? What other records are related? And if I come on down and I click on incidents right here, associated view. I like the name of that, associated view. These are the associated records with Matt coming from the incidents table.
Right. So because we'll see this view name in a moment here also, right? Somewhere else. But, so it's showing us how we can do it, but to me, the end user experience of you doing that was a little rough.
I believe so. They kind of know where to go.
Right. So it sounds like we need to tweak the view, add the columns we care about, and tweak a form to be able to add the columns, add the rows, and then also find a way to somehow relate these a little cleaner.
Bring them together.
All right,
I think that's
so
what we
3
should do.
steps?
3 steps to go. All right, so I think we're going to go with the modifying our view first of the incidents.
Okay.
Then we'll go make the form of the incidents. Then we'll add in how do we see these related incidents at a much quicker rate.
Cool.
So now what we're going to go to do this, you can do a lot of things in the design studio. So I'm gonna do as much as we can here, and then there's some things that you have to modify in the solution itself. Is that all right with you, Brian?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come on over here to that incidents view, and you can see, so again, I'm back in the designer, not in the app itself. And when I hover over the incidents view, you got this pencil icon. I'm just gonna click to edit the view. And when I click on edit the view, it's going to take me into the view designer. Now, as of right now, you can only modify the active view from here, but it's great because it's a quick little way to get there. And what we're looking at is what they created for us. Primary name column created on column. And then we choose, do we want to keep everything? Do we want to move some things? What do we want to add?
Well, let's kill the created column because I think we care more about the incident date, not when it was logged.
I agree. So watch how easy it is to delete this column from the view. Again, deleting from the view, not from the table.
Okay.
So I hit the drop down and I just come right on down to the bottom and I hit remove.
Awesome.
That's now done.
First and foremost, we need to know what treasure the incident occurred with.
Yep.
So we want to log the treasure and the date, and then maybe like the severity of it.
Sounds good to me. Now, the way I like to add views, I don't like clicking this add view column because you only do one at a time. So what I do, especially if I know I'm going to just my custom columns, right here next to, so I'm in the table columns panel, right here if I hit the drop down, I'm going to say, just show me my custom columns that I created.
Okay, gotcha.
Get rid of that white noise. And so I think what we said, we wanted to see the incident date that it was on. We wanted to see
the treasure.
And we want to see the severity. Now we can add all of them in here if we want to.
Right.
But what if I added them in the wrong order? Well, here's what's great. You do have drag and drop capabilities here. So if I want to see the treasure first before the incident date, I can just drag and then I can drop it over. And then this is also where you can add in your own filters to this view. You can change the sort order. But Brian, what are you thinking?
I think that's great. So it looks like you mentioned filters and all. I see the filters on the right side, and we have sort by on the right side. And you can also do like you do in Excel, where you can hit the little down arrows next to things. And would you mind showing what it might look on the right there for severity? Like what if you just want to see high profile stuff here?
So I go into severity, hit the drop down here. I can choose filter by. And then I could choose, what do I want to filter this by? Now, again, as Brian, you mentioned just a little bit ago, we're just coming up with the default view for the user.
Right.
They can go in and modify these filters if they ever need to and make their own. Correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So this will be our starting point. We're not going to do any kind of filters here, but I think that's great. Now, how do we make this available to our users now?
Well, what we have to do is we have to come up here and hit save and publish.
Okay.
So when we save it, it saves our changes. And then when we publish it, it now makes it part of the application. So it pushes that update out to it. So as it's doing its saving and publishing, just to prove it to you that, I'm not telling you the wrong stuff, I'm going to come back to my model-driven app, and I'm going to come on back over here to my incidents.
Okay.
And nothing's going to change right now. But if I come on over and refresh the app,
you might have to do a hard refresh.
You might have to do a hard refresh here. Hold down that control key and refresh. Bingo. Now we see our new columns that we've added.
That's awesome. So much easier than what we're going to see in a moment with Canvas apps.
You gave me the easy job, Brian.
I did. I thought it was be appropriate. You've been in management too long now. All right. So now notice things like the incident number is super wide. Can we fix that also to make it where it's a little more?
We can fix that. Now our users can fix it on their own. When they're in the app, they can just start to drag and move it over.
I noticed as soon as you did that, it starred. The active incidents is now a star next to it, so I could save that at that point.
Exactly. If you hit that drop down right here, you can say, I'm going to save this as a new view. Now, this is my view. It's not your view, Brian.
Right,
you play the app. This is just for me, but I could share that view with you if I'm like, Brian would really want this. Now, if I want to do that as a default, I would need to come back over here to the view designer.
Okay.
And then I would shrink this down from over here.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Now we got the view now done. And could you also show where else I can go to change that view? Where would I go if it was not in the app? Also?
Yes. So what I'm going to do, so I've already saved and published here. So I'm going to go back here. And then I'm going to click back again out of the model-driven app designer because I want to get back to the solution because you can do some things here, but everything you ever want to do, you can do in your solution. So I'm going to click on back up here at the top. And now that took me to the solution this time. Just to let y'all know, every once in a while it gets a little bit hung up. If that happens to you, go back to make.powerapps.com, go to your environment, click your solution name, and then you'll get back there. So now that I'm back in the solution, I want to do more than what I could have done in the designer. So we want to modify that form for the incidents. So I've just expanded out my tables here, and I'm going to go and expand out my incident. I can click forms here. Option 1, or you can click on incident itself, And then you can come over here to the top and you can click on Forms. So I'm going to click on Forms. Now what you'll notice is there's 3 forms that are automatically made for you. Now the one we are concerned with in this application is what we call the main form.
Can we show the views also, Rowan,
Yeah.
to show what that was about?
Yes.
So up top where it has forms, you can also toggle that and go to views. And just want to show you that view that Matt did modify a moment ago is listed here as well. There's active, and you'll also see there's the associated view right below that. So we could modify that if you wanted to.
Yes, and we're gonna go a little bit fancier than that. But yeah, you go your views, your forms. This is where if you couldn't do it in the model-driven app designer, you come here and find the view, find the form that you want to modify. So I think we're happy with our active
Yeah, I think that's great.
incidents. So let's go on over here to our forms. So I just went and hit the drop down again on incident table. We're still in the forms. And we're going to find the information main. Now in mine, it's the 3rd one in the list. Just letting you all know it might be the 2nd or the 1st one. Make sure you find the one that says main. And then once you find that, we're going to click on the information form. Now, the form designer, you're going to have a lot more panels off to the side, more what I call the panel selector, different things that you can add into the form itself. And before we start adding things into the form, I know there's one thing you always love to do. You don't like the owner being in the middle, do you?
Well, owner in this case is really the teacher, but the evaluator who created the incident. I like to show it at the top right as a header, so that way my users get used to kind of glancing up there and say, who created this record?
I like that too.
So it's up to you, of course.
Yep, I like doing that. So not required, but I think it looks better up here. So if I just click on it, and then I'm going to drag this up to the top right.
It's turning light purple right now.
Because if I do it here, nothing's going to happen. But right here, that's going to put it into that component of the form, which we call our header. So if I drag and drop it right here, I think it looks cleaner there.
I think it does too. And you can put the 4 things in that header. Now, it's up to you and whether you think people will more likely to see it up top or less likely to see it. Sometimes the more you make things obvious, sometimes the less people see it. So
I agree.
I always put my header up there for the owner of the record and sometimes the status as well. But this is good.
All right.
Now that incident number, we mentioned we don't want a user to be able to type anything in there. How do we prevent them from doing that?
That's a great question. So a few ways. First, before we make that change, if you click on your incident number field, it's going to select it. And you got your properties panel over here on the right saying what you have selected. What you'll see a lot with Jonathan in another video is what we call a tree view. And over here on the left, these stacks of paper, this is where you can go and select the individual pieces if you don't feel like selecting them in the middle. I usually select them in the middle here, but what we want is with incident number selected, over here on the right, we're going to come on over and we're going to make this a read-only field.
Okay.
So now it's going to be locked. You'll see the symbol, and because we set it up, and Nate and y'all set that up as being auto-numbered, Dataverse is going to auto-number it every time a record is created.
Awesome. Now how do we add the other fields then?
So the way we add these other fields, it's almost as simple. I don't know, it is as simple as doing it with the view. We come on over to the left-hand side here,
Okay.
and we click on our table columns, the same panel that we saw in our view. And once again, I'm going to do my trick. We only care about our custom columns. So I'm going to hit that filter. I'm going to come on over down to custom. And then as you click and you add in, it just adds it in the way it is. So I'm going to go with the treasure itself. And then we'll go with like the date. We'll choose the severity, the description, and resolution. And if you don't like the order that I put them in, you can
Just drag and drop them.
just drag and drop them to your heart's content.
Now that description column is interesting because right now I'm noticing it only allows for one line right now. How do we fix that?
So for our description over here, we see it and we see our properties over on the right hand side, and it says the form field height has been set to 1 row. So if I come on over here and I change it to form field height being set to 2 rows, we're now going to get more space with inside of it.
Awesome. Additionally, I see things like the severity and the resolution. I want to put a little style on that. Make it look a little clean, a
little bit of swag?
A little swag here.
All right.
Should we go ahead and show what this looks like first, and then kind of show how we can make it a little swaggy?
I think we should do that. So let's do that. So let me save and publish this. So again, we made instant number read only. We added in all of our other custom fields. We've saved and published.
And there's two things we're going to have to do left on this. We're going to make those a little more swaggy. And then we also want to make it where I want to log things like notes and phone calls and all that in here as well. So I'm probably making it 2 columns will be appropriate.
2 columns that I think we're going to go
So those are our 2 last things on this form. But let's go ahead and see
what we've got
so far.
I like that. So let's come back on over here. And so I'm back in the app itself. I'm going to come up to the top here, refresh. Again, you might have to do a hard refresh. And now, so there's our view from earlier. Now, when I click on new this time, okay, it's looking a lot better than what it was, right?
It does, yeah.
So we can come on in, we'll fill this information later, but let's go to that severity.
Yeah, it looks kind of bland.
A little bit bland. Same thing with, what was it? Our
Resolution.
As well.
So I've done all the work at putting colors on those things, but we can't see those colors. Now, there are a number of components you can do to get those. Hopefully, they'll be native eventually. But right now, what I did is I went out for you guys, went out to pcf.gallery. That's the website I went to. And I downloaded one of my favorite components for this. One of my friends has built this for us. And you'll find that out there, but I'll put a link to the original URL for that as well. So you can see as they update it, all those kind of, it's a great module for putting little splash of colors on those.
And who doesn't like color seeing them in here, right? Nice identifier. So let's add it in. All right, let's do it. So I'm gonna come back on over to our form. So we're going back to our other tab. We'll start right here at severity.
Okay.
So we got the severity field selected. And then right down here in the bottom right hand of your screen, you're going to see components. And when you expand the components down, this is where we're going to add in that component. And this, again, is what we imported in that solution from a little bit earlier in our course here. So I'm going to click on Add Component here. And then we're going to, not seeing a component, we're just going to get rid of that here. And we're going to choose, well, which component are we trying to add?
I know it's called color something, so we can, but as you can see, it's not here. So we'll have to go to get more components to see that.
Exactly. So we'll hit get more components. And then we're going to come on up here.
Oh, there it is.
In our colorful option set component from Orbis.
Perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and select it.
We're going to select that, and we're just going to add it right on in. And then once we have it, then we just select it.
Sweet.
Now, this is an important part Brian mentioned because it's gotten me in the past about show component on. We got to select them all, right? Because if not, it's only going to be supported in one of the versions, not your mobile or none at all. So if you're going to want to see this on your tablet, mobile, make sure those 3 checks are there. They usually are there, but every once in a while, see where it's not.
And the reason why is there may be some components that aren't mobile friendly. So you want to exclude them from mobiles on those, but then show them on web. So
good.
Looks good. Let's go ahead and hit OK on this.
So we'll hit done here.
And let's do it also on the resolution as well, just for giggles here.
So we'll come on over.
This time it's a little different, right? So when you add it this time, it's a little bit easier.
Exactly, because when we go down, we have resolution selected. We go to components. We click Add Component. Well, now we've already used it, so we don't have to go back to get more components here. So if I come on over, we're going to click on it, and then we're just going to come on over, and we're going to hit I'm done.
Let's save and publish this bad boy.
Let's do it. So we've done it. We're going to save it. We're going to publish it. Oh, you know what? No, we're not going to publish it because you said earlier you gave me a requirement. Didn't you want to see some?
I did. I want to see the. I want to see the results of this.
Let's see the results. Let's see the results. I like to test as we go too.
I got ADD, man. I got to see. I got to get my reward here somehow. All right. So let's see the reward.
So we saved and we published. I'm going to come up here.
Hard refresh
this.
And again, make sure it's a hard refresh because if you do a soft one, it may not. The cache may still be warm.
Yeah. So let's come on down to severity.
Oh, there we go.
Low resolution. We got our colors in here, and we're getting there.
Looks a lot cleaner. So now we just have to make it really 2 columns with this on the left column and on the right column. Maybe do like a 60-40 split.
I think that's
show things like phone calls about this incident. If I talk to a parent, I want to log all that, right?
Files.
Files.
They give you something to load up. Maybe someone wrote an incident report. As a teacher, I would write them by hand. And let's just take a picture
Pictures
of it.
and all those kind of things. Yeah, absolutely. So we want to have that in the right column. So how do we go about that? Now, earlier, Nate did check enable attachments.
Good, because I need them.
Yep.
I need them.
And creating a new activity. He's checked those 2 areas. Can we show just to refresh them, just in case they get an error later, where he did that?
You got it. For those of you that did it, just stay where you're at. But for those of not, and just for review here, I'm going to close out of the form designer real quick here. And I'm going to come back to the table itself. So I was already on the table. I was in the form. So I'm just going to come and just click on my incident table. And then right here where you see properties in the upper right hand corner of this box, we're going to click on it right here. And then right here you have your enable attachments options. And then you'll notice that you also have your advanced options underneath as well. So this is where you could go if you didn't turn on enable attachments earlier. You could turn them on at this point. But
Right.
Brian, if I turned them on, I don't think I can turn them off.
You're kind of stuck at this point.
Kind of stuck.
But what Matt's about to show you in your create activities, I'm sorry, is in there
Yep,
also?
we're going to move on down.
There it is. So if you did not check these, the form that Matt's about to modify will not work for you, the change he's about to do. So just a quick word of warning. This is where you want to go and fix that if you do not see the same settings that Matt has.
Yep, so again, creating a new activity and the enable attachments if you want to put this feature into your form. All right, so I'm going to click on cancel here because we already have ours. And I'm going to head back to my forms. And I'm going to go back to the main form again. We're still on that incident table. I'm going to open it up. And the first thing I'm going to do is this timeline's a great feature, but it doesn't really need to, in my opinion, it doesn't need to take up the whole screen. So I do like to do a 2-column split.
I'm thinking like a 60-40 split.
60-40.
Yeah. Like that. Okay,
so what we'll do to get that done is select basically the gray area, just not inside of this section here. And if you go to your tree view, you can see that I have the general tab currently selected. And what we're going to say is, for inside of this tab, we don't want it 1 column. We want to move it to 2 columns. And once we set it to columns, it sets it to 50-50. And it gives us, it's like, hey, you want 2 columns? I'm going to give you a section if you want to put something in, which we're going to do in a second.
Okay.
But I do like the 60-40 split. So let's make column 1 with, let's set that to 60.
And 60-50. I wish math worked that way.
Right.
That explains why I failed math.
I'd get so many spams because you were a math teacher and you did it wrong. So so I got to make sure I'm right on this one.
Now I noticed that section up top there also. What is a section?
So a section is, I like to think of it as kind of like a container that you kind of do in Canvas apps. It's where you can group things together. You can put multiple components. You can put your fields in. It's just like a nice grouping area, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it could be multiple columns in a section if you want to. So you want to have first name and last name side by side, you can most certainly do that.
You definitely can.
So how do we add that list of notes, I don't want to use a word, list of notes and activities and those kind of things in that right panel?
A few different ways. You can do some dragging and dropping. So what this is, it's a special component. And there's lots of components that come with model-driven applications, but this is called a timeline control. So I could just drag and drop timeline into this section, or if you're not a drag and drop kind of person, you can click the section you want to add it into, and then you just come on over and you click on timeline.
Perfect. Now notice it has that looks for redundancy on the new section and timeline. How do we go about fixing that? I
agree. Like, that's too much. So the way that I like to do it is I like to click the entire section. And again, that's where the tree view is so cool. And I think I'm a big tree view person. I've said it enough. I won't say any more. But once I have it selected, right up here at the top, I can come up to the hide label.
Okay. So
I just click on hide label here. So the label's now hidden, and now it's just the timeline control. And I do like for it to say timeline, because I think it's going to...
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Makes sense of what we're going to do with
now,
it.
Can we explore the timeline for a second here also? When you click on that and go deeper on the right side, you'll notice a few extra settings are in here as well. As Matt scrolls down the right side, you're going to see things like what kind of things he can log, things like appointments and phone calls and faxes and those kind of weird things. And he can also remove some of those if he so chose also by hitting the 3 dot next to any of those and removing or disabling those.
Yeah, so if I didn't want like the Teams chat in here, come on over and I can just uncheck the enable here. But let's keep it all in for today. Better to have more than
exactly. And you can also create your own custom ones if you wanted to as well. So you could have one called Parent Conference, for example, and add that in here as well. Awesome. So we save and publish this?
Yeah, let's save and publish. See what now the timeline control is going to be a little bit different here. So we see it, right? And I mean, it's telling us we're almost there. Like, what do they mean we're almost there?
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what that means. So let's come on over here, back to our application. So we've saved and we published.
Okay.
We're going to do a refresh here again. Again, you might have to do a hard refresh. So we got our form. Okay, definitely looks good, but I can't do anything at this point.
Almost there, huh?
Almost there.
Well, let's log an incident here to
Let's do that.
to Matt, the person that we just added.
To Matt. So I'm on the treasure column, which is a lookup to the contact table. So I kind of went a little bit quick there. So let me just make my mouse cursor active. These are going to show me my recent contacts I've been in charge of or, been working with. But if I want to see the full list, I can hit that magnifying glass. I can hit enter either way. And again, as you told us earlier, there's lots of views that come with our tables. This is another view that was made for us. It's called the lookup view. This is where we could go back and modify the lookup view to see even more details about the records. But
And then as you start typing in there also, it will start to find that record even faster for you if you wanted to as well.
bingo. So I got Matt here, and let's say the incident date is on the 19th. Severity, severe, let's say,
Matt's bad breath.
there we go, Matt's bad breath.
Definitely severe.
Oh yeah, and resolution.
we're gonna expel him out of-
expulsion on that one, right?
All
so
right.
we're gonna save and close it. Actually, you know what?
Let's
Let me
do
just
save.
save it. Let me just
Yeah.
do a save. Now watch what happens when we hit save. here.
Oh, cool. On the right side.
Timeline. So you have to save a record before you can add something to the timeline. 'Cause
That makes
it's
sense, yeah.
a living contextual reference about this record when people talk about it. So the teacher made this for Matt. You know, principal calls up Matt's mom, says, hey, you need to check out his breath. And he wants to say, well, talk to mom. She says, we're going to get him some scope or Listerine or whatever. She can now come in here and add a note. So we want to add a note?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's
What
do
do you
it.
think?
Let's
So
add
let's
something.
add a
Yeah.
note.
Blah, blah, blah. And
We'll say, talk to mom. And we're going to say...
she may pass out also for her bad breath. So runs in a family, maybe.
It runs
Okay.
in a family, getting
All right,
mouthwash.
cool.
And then I'm just going to add that note again. I could add a file here if I wanted to, but I'll add that note and close it.
Now, how can you log things like phone calls and appointments and those? I saw we had that. This is a note, but there's also other things we can add too, right?
Yeah. So if we come up here to the top, we see this plus create a timeline record. If I come up to the top here, this is where we can start to add in the extra features.
So anything you checked in that previous screen would show up here.
It's now going to show up here for you.
Awesome. And that's a free feature, not free feature, but it's just included in
Included with Dataverse.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it. All right. So I'm happy with the form. What say you?
Well, I love that we can go in there and click on Matt's name and go and pull Matt's record up. Let's try that first.
All right.
And then when I'm looking at his record, and if I want to see that incident, right now it's kind of hidden, right? I have to go to related
is.
incident. Could you go to related incidents?
Yeah, can I do one other thing real quick?
Yeah, of course,
though?
of course.
So let me just go back to, and so we were on the form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just go back to the view of incidents. So you'll notice that some of these are in blue and the others are just regular text. So these are just links to the records that they are related to. So instead of having to come and find where you want, if you see a record you're already interested in, you can just click on it right from the view itself. And so this takes me to the exact same place.
Nice, nice.
Now you were saying I need to go to related, right?
Yeah, so I want to go in and hunt down that incident now. So I'm doing a whole bunch of steps that I don't think teachers may not be
And that's a lot to look
It
through
is, yeah, and
as
not more down the road. So if we go to incidences here, we'll see there one incident. Again, the associated view, which we did not modify, but we can do that if we wanted to. So how would I make this a little easier for an end user?
Yeah, and it's all about making it easy, right? So basically we want to say if we're on a contact record, we just want to have a nice little tab at the top that just says incidents and see all the incidents that this contact has been a part of. So to do that, we're going to use what's called a subgrid. So it's a grid of sub-related records, so to speak. That's what I think about my eyes. So to do that, we do have to do this again inside of our solution. So I'm going to come back over here. This was the form designer still open. We've already saved and published. I'm going to back out of here. And then the table that we want to go to, we have to think, what table do we want to see the related records about?
So I'm in a contact, and I want to see all the incidences about a contact.
So-
but only from within the treasure.
Only from the
treasure form.
Treasure
'Cause, you know,
form.
sponsors hopefully don't have those, and nor do-
Hopefully not.
Hopefully guardians don't either. So-
Exactly. So let's go to that, what we would call the one side of the table, the parent table, which in our case is going to be our contact table. So I'm going to click on contact over here.
Okay.
And then once again, we're going to come on over here to our forms. We're going to click on our forms. All right, and this is where, that came with the solution that you graciously built for us, is we have our treasure main form. And that's the only place where I want to put this in.
Okay.
So I'm going to click on my treasure main form. But as you can see, you can make multiple main forms. Now, those other forms, did you create them from scratch?
I cloned them. So once I had the first one done, I would hit save a copy up top and then go through and then delete stuff I don't care about.
Okay, good. So quick, all about working smarter, not harder, right? So from here, what I would like to do is I'm going to add in a component up here, just another tab area.
Okay.
So over on the left, we go to our components section, and I'm going to add in a one column tab. So I'm going to click on one column tab right here.
Now it may appear like it didn't work.
Yeah.
So it's really concerning many people I think when they come here originally. What's going on here?
Yeah, it looks blank, but we're gonna add some things inside of it here. Now, the first thing I would obviously do, I don't want to say new tab. Let's call it incidents.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm happy with that.
And then also, if you click away and come right back, like hit program attendance, something like that, or one of those summary, and then go back to it, it should now be a little more flushed out, right? So it's kind of one of the little annoying things that it did.
For whatever reason, it's been that way for a while too.
Yeah, for about over a year now.
Yeah. So now that we have this, we have a section inside of here, and what we want to do is we want to add in what's called our subgrid. Find related records from another table that's related to the record that you're currently on, from what we would call our contacts table. So with my, this time I'll do the drag and drop method. I didn't do it on the other one, but this time I'll drag it, and I'll drag my subgrid into this section here. And it's going to say, all right, first and foremost, really important decision. Do you want to see all children records from another table? So if I don't click on show related records,
Those should be all.
yeah, it's going to be.
No, I only want to see Matt's incidences.
You just want to see mine.
Right,
All right.
right.
Well, in that case, I do need to make sure to say only show the related incidents
Okay.
for the record that you are on. And then we choose which table that we want to do this from. So in our case, the table that we want to do this from is our
Incidents, right?
incidents.
Okay, let's scroll down. There it is.
Closer. There we go. There's our incidents. And then we choose the view that we want to show. And you know what? I think our active view looked pretty good from earlier.
Yeah, I think it's fine for
Why
time.
not reuse it?
I typically, if we were doing more time, I would create a special view for the subgrids. And that way, I don't need the treasure name on here. I already know I'm looking at Matt's record. So I would remove that from the subgrid view, just as a nice little cherry on the top. Not required for today, though.
That redundant information.
So you're going to see that for the other views. You'll see like program attendance subgrid, where we've done that, basically.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to click on done here.
How about redundant names here?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of like we did the timeline. So I'm thinking up here, I'm going to click on that whole section. I'm going to hide this label.
And what is that new SG control? Wow.
Yeah, that new SG control. It's just the new subgrid control name, and that's the label that they give to it.
Okay, that's a lot of value.
That is a lot. So you could either choose to hide that label, or you could put in your own label here. I think this says incidents. I don't think we really need the label.
Nah,
it's
you're
all
fine.
a design decision, so I'm going to hide that label here as well. And I think I'm liking what we've got so far here.
Awesome. Well, this looks awesome, Matt. Now, there's one more thing that I've noticed.
What you got?
When you first open the app up, let's go back. Let's go ahead and publish this first of all.
Let's save and publish.
And that new incident thing will just show up now for us. So let's open up that app again.
All right, so let's go back to this app here. And
now if you refresh this again, we should see your new magical view you created. There is our incidents. And drum roll. Hey-oh, there we go. Now, what I noticed, though, is when you were doing the pull down on the views, we had a lot of stuff there. And same thing in the forms up top. I see we're on the treasure form right now. And when you hit that pull down, you'll see there's lots of other forms here, which we do not care about. So we want to show you briefly here, how do you remove the stuff you don't care about in this case?
Got it.
So let's go back to the app again, and the app editor, that is, designer. And let's just show briefly how we can do that.
Modify that.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So again, I'm in the form designer here, which we're happy with. So I'm going to close out, going to go back, and we're going to go, so we're back in our overall solution. And now I'm going to click on apps. And then we're going to find our app that we made, Potter's House Back Office.
Okay.
I'm going to click on this from here. It's going to open on up. And so let's say you want to work on the incidents one to start with. Or
Yeah,
is there a certain
let's
one
just
that you
do
want to go
contacts.
with?
This is an example here.
We'll go to contacts.
Yeah.
So over here, you can click on contacts. I could click on it from over here in the navigation as well.
Now I'm looking on the right there, and I see a whole lot of views on the right side here. So all I really care about seeing are the treasures, sponsors, and their guardians, and maybe the active one is my catch-all just in case. But those three are the big ones I want to see, and everything else can just go.
Just go away.
For time being, at least.
Right. So for example, we definitely want the active contacts. We want the subgrid. Let's see, the no campaign activity.
Yeah, and I noticed at the bottom it says show all views on the bottom right there also.
Include the show more.
No, very bottom there.
Yep.
There we go.
Here.
So that's how we can toggle and kind of build back from there if you want to. But let's remove a few here just for fun.
We'll start removing a few. So let's get rid of like my connections.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So I hit the 3 dots, I click on remove. Now again, does that remove it from the table?
No, it's only removed from this app now. So the other apps that might be using the same table can use that view. But in our case, we care about that view. So you might have 20 applications all using context, and only 4 of them need to see that view. So you can absolutely do that.
Perfect.
So that's good enough. You can see how you can do that now. The same thing applies in forms as well, right?
Exactly. Same thing with the form. So if I went over to the contacts form, and then we come on over down here. These are currently all the forms. And right now by default it says include all the forms in the app. We could remove the forms we want. We could uncheck include all the forms in the app. It says, okay, if you do this, then you're going to start making sure you go and pick which forms that you want to be added in.
Awesome. Matt, now what kind of classes would you recommend somebody goes to next to learn some of this stuff?
Yeah, so the best classes, especially if you're really focused on model-driven apps, we got a great model-driven course that's called Building Solutions in Dataverse. It's going to walk you through beginning to end, creating tables, creating your solutions, how to make a model-driven app, how to incorporate Power Automate with it as well. Also a little few Canvas app ideas, and then really getting into calculated columns, roll-up columns, the security that comes with it, a little bit of the admin side. So that was the best class for me when I was first learning model-driven, because it's kind of, I mean, it works. It's easy, but it's still learning where do you go to do all these features. So for model-driven apps, that is the key point. When you get with Jonathan on Canvas apps, we got great introduction to Canvas app courses. We're coming out with some advanced ones as well. But those are, and then our app in a snaps as well, just for a simple model-driven app, a little 1.5, demonstration just to go, maybe just a review. But if you want to get really in depth, it's our Building Solutions in Dataverse.
That's
course.
Awesome. I do have one more thing I'd love you to show us also, if that's possible.
You got it. What do we got?
And don't forget also, guys, the code today is Potters40. That's going to give you 40% off that on-demand class, all of our classes that Matt was mentioning. But it also gives $40 to the Potter's House to continue their mission to help serve the kids of Guatemala. So let's go back over to that app one more time, please.
Let's go back.
And I noticed on the left there where it says grades. Would you mind going to that grades table, please?
Yeah, let's go to the grades.
I noticed we have to go and enter in a record for every grade that these students can go to. That's going to be a pain in the butt. Yeah, times 12. Is there a better way, like, let's just focus on grade name right now only.
Okay.
Is there a better way that I can go through and enter all those? Let's enter one record just for fun here.
Just to show how we do it to begin
first,
with.
yeah. So maybe, first grade or something like that. All right, good enough. So how would I go about, if you save and close this, doing that in more bulk? There's also things like called data flows to do it in bulk from SharePoint or SQL Server or Salesforce.com, but is there an analyst way of doing this?
Yeah, there is. It's a nice, easy little function here. It's kind of hidden because it says like export to Excel, so you think you're going to export the data, which you can do. But if you click on this drop down right here, and if you go to open in Excel online.
And this might be buried underneath the 3 dots on the right there also.
Very good with your screen resolution. Thank you for mentioning that. So I'm going to come on over here and do open in Excel online.
So let's say you do like 4 or 5 records here. And
Sounds good. So I'm just going to go, just make this, very quick here.
You're not a spelling teacher, it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, right? So second grade, you know what? To save time, I'm just going to do 2 more.
Yeah, and how about first grade? Can you change it to kindergarten also?
You got it. So I'm going to come over here.
Oh, no, on the far left, the top left.
Change it here.
Yeah, just kindergarten there. Just to show that you can also do updates. Updates apply, deletes apply, and when you hit save here, it is going to push the 2 new records up, update the 1 record, and even delete a record if there were any deletes here also. So that's pretty awesome.
It's pretty good. And it's going to, depending on how much you're putting in at a time, it could take a while. But you'll get to this screen that's going to say, do you want to track the progress?
Sure.
And if I click on track progress here, it's going to go through. Right now, it's currently in the import. Just keep clicking refresh over and over. It's going to go to parsing, and then it's going to say, well, hopefully it says successful through it. So it's completed.
It was fast, way faster than
That
normal.
was really fast.
And this is a great way of copying and pasting from one Excel spreadsheet into this Excel spreadsheet. Things like lookups, all those kind of things, and choices all work. And if any errors occurred, we see those errors by hitting that little Excel online hyperlink right there. What does our data look like now, Matt?
Let's see. Let's close out of here. Let's refresh.
There we go.
And there we go. Kindergarten, second grade, and third grade.
Awesome. Let's get first grade.
Yeah, we skipped first grade.
It's all good. We're just that good.
Huh?
We're just
That's
that
good. Yeah, got a smart kid.
I had to do kindergarten 12 times, but it's okay. So sounds great. Matt, is there anything else you want to show us?
I'm happy with this. My one thing is about model-driven apps. I was very nervous about it when I first learned. I love Canvas apps because these just kind of just worked. But Brian, if you give me a job, an hour, Matt, I need an app made, I'm going model-driven app every single time. And it's not maybe as intuitive until you learn how to work with the app, but the flexibility and how much you can go from one record to another record and show related. To do that in a Canvas app, you're going to be writing some formulas.
Speaking of Canvas app, that's our next module with John Silva. But you see how fast Matt went with this. To do the same thing in a Canvas app would take a couple hours at least. And really, basically what Matt's done, you rinse and repeat for every table that we have. So I did the other tables in about 2 hours in total, maybe a little bit less than that or a lot less than that, but about 2 hours from end to end to give the solution to you that you have in front of you right now. So now we're ready to jump into some Canvas action now, which some people really love more, and some people, once they saw this, they love this even more. So Stay tuned for John Silva on creating a Canvas application. Well, welcome back. I'm here with John Silva again to actually build out this Canvas application. So John, if you remember the requirements we drew up earlier in our whiteboard session, we had to build an application to do health evaluations 3 times a year for students. Now, this is going to be a Canvas application we talked about before, which is our second type of application we've covered today. This Canvas app can be used on, really they want to use on phone devices in our case. So even though we can make it tablet friendly and phone friendly, it's going to be used on a phone in our case. Okay. So where does it make sense to start when building out a Canvas application? We have our solution done.
Yeah, we want to go to that solution, right? We need to think about the environment, like where are we storing it? So that environment structure, then go into the solution, which is the package or the folder inside of that environment to keep all the objects that are working together as one. So I would go into that environment, into that solution, and make the app from there.
Let's get started then.
All right. So you want to follow along with me. We're going to go ahead and choose our environment, make sure we have that solution open, and then build out our Canvas app all from inside there.
Yeah, the biggest mistake people make here is they are not in the correct environment, right? And then also, of course, doing it outside of a solution. Should a student always use solutions?
It's not mandatory, right, for a lot of cases, but it's definitely a best practice. We want to be able to use it as much as possible, especially if you're thinking about your application lifecycle management process and moving from development into test into production. The solution just gives you all the best options for that moving forward, taking your connection references, your security roles, all that package as one, so you can move one object instead of 15 and try to figure out, am I missing that one little thing to make the app run?
Sounds good. Let's begin then.
All right, let's go for it. So here we are. We're in our environments. I'm going to go to our left-hand navigation and go down to solutions. And here we have our solution. So we already have our solution made. So we're going to select the solution here so we can go ahead and open that up and build inside. And we have a lot of stuff in here, of course.
Right.
So this is
and
also
ours may look a little different than theirs in this case. That's fine.
This is coming from the other apps. We have our model-driven app, and we even have the final product of this app done, right? Because the whole purpose of what we're going to be doing now is to show how we got there, right?
Right.
So that's what we're doing here. We already have a complete version, but what we are going to do is select new app, Canvas app.
Now also, when they installed the solution earlier in the first prerequisite section, it included this app also.
Yeah.
So if you need to copy and paste code, then you'll have that as well as our cheat sheet that we provided in the description of this will have all the code that John's going to use later as well.
Perfect. All right, so go ahead and choose Canvas app from here. And I'm going to name it very similar, but we're going to call it our demo version, right? So for our app name, we can just call this demo. This is our eval app, right? And of course, remember, we have to choose the format here. In many cases, we're probably choosing tablet, but in this case specifically, because we're likely going to be using it on a phone predominantly most of the time, let's go ahead and make it a phone format to start with.
But it'll still work on other devices.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and then you can go ahead and create it. And once this loads up, it's going to take us into our designer where we can go ahead and work with Power App Studio to build out our app. Now, I'm going to get pop-up screens like this all the time. You're probably going to get the same thing. I'm going to be your guide here today. Brian and I are going to show you how to get through this, so you can go ahead and skip all of these different pieces here. Once you've done it once, you're probably going to know how to go from there as well, so we can go ahead and skip that section. And then here we are inside of Power App Studio. Now, working with Power App Studio, you're going to get this general layout just about every single time. Things do change from time to time with the new updates with Power Apps and different features. But really at the top here, this is the big one where you're going to see differences within the app itself. And this is the modern command bar. It's a dynamic command bar, which means that it's going to be dynamic based on the object that we are editing or that we're working with at that time. The way to tell which object, which piece of the app we're on right now is on the left-hand side in something called the tree view. It's kind of like your outline view of the app, the different things that are inside of it, and then you'll have like nested components part of it. So right now you can see right now, for mine, highlighted is screen 1. That's the first screen of the app or the first page, or from you PowerPoint people, the first slide in your presentation that you're working with. So you can see there for screen 1, I have all of these different options at the top. If I were to click on app, you'll see I have different options, and that's the dynamic toolbar that we have at the top here to work with. It's going to be different based upon what we can and can't change for that selected object. All right, so that's one thing to definitely keep note of from that point on. So we'll start in screen 1 here. And the way that we're going to build this out is we're going to start to add layers into the application. I really like to think of, if I've never done this before, I may have opened up Microsoft PowerPoint once or twice in my life. If I'm doing that, a blank PowerPoint presentation, I'm starting with maybe a theme, or I'm starting with like the background or a header or something that can be uniformly used from one slide to the next. Canvas apps is a lot like that, where you can just keep using the same features.
Well, and the cool thing is here, we're going to build an app that is going to mimic almost 90% of the apps we've seen out there, right? You have a quick screen up front, you go to a detail screen, you can then edit, you can insert and potentially delete, and then you see the old records. Yeah. So this is going to match pretty much every app you want to build in corporate world.
Absolutely. So perfect way to start there, again, thinking layers. So what I'm going to do on the left-hand side here, if we go into our little navigation area, you can expand this on the top left, is from the tree view, if you go down 2, we have themes. And this is where you can use some of the just standardized out-of-the-box themes here from Microsoft and Power Apps to just choose whichever one you like to start with. This can be customized. We can do our own custom theme. We can add in our own colors later on if we want. But for today, we're going to keep it pretty basic, pretty standard. So pick one that you like, that you want to work with. I'll use steel for this case, just because it's something different, right? We use Power Apps a lot. Sometimes I'll go platinum or green. You pick one, whatever one works best for you. Yeah. Right, there we are. So there's our theme. And then what we can do is we could talk about data. Now, when we click on data here, you're going to get this pop out letting you know, okay, add data to your app. We don't really have the app made yet, but for a lot of people, this is a great starting point. So just get all the connections, all of the data here inside of the app to begin with. So you're not worried about looking for it later on, finding it. It's just already there. You're just in the making mode from this point on.
Yeah, so in our case, we have really 3 tables that are going to be involved. One is the health evaluation, which is going to store, of course, the health evaluations, but it's for a certain student, the contact table for that student. And then we're going to have a user table, which is going to hold the evaluators.
Perfect. Yeah. And luckily for us, because we are using Dataverse, it's really, really easy to connect into those tables. So we'll just click here, add data. If it was external data, we would come down here and use connectors, because that's using that Power Platform API connector to go find that from that source, like SQL Server or SharePoints or anything. But since it is Dataverse, they're all right here. And you can see we have some of our standard tables like that contact table available right here.
Yeah, and there are 1,500 connectors at the time of this recording at least, and they're adding, it feels like 10 to 20 every single month.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah. And they're updating all the old ones too, so it's even better. So we have contacts. I can see here I've just expanded tables here. You can see contacts. You just click on it, and what it's going to do is just simply add the connection to the contacts table. It's really that simple to work with.
For a health evaluation one, can we search that?
Yeah, so if you come here to add data, you can come and search right here, and you could just search for health. And if you have the name of the table available, if you know what it is, I mean, it's just there. It's the first one I could see showing up for me. So there's our health evaluations. And we could do the same thing for the user table, right? It's the same idea. We can search up here as well, but I like to come in here and just go search because I like to see select the data source. It makes sense for me.
So I am seeing that little diamond symbol next to those things. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that means it's a premium connector. It's a premium service. Really what it is it's telling you, if I hover over it, you can see it does say premium. If I hover that, there's our little description. Essentially, you need to have the Power Apps Premium license or higher in order to use Dataverse, SQL, other premium connectors. Essentially, cost more to go ahead and use.
Yeah, and if you're in a developer environment right now, it's included in your developer environment. So it's only when you want to use this in production and play the app outside of design mode will it require that premium license.
Absolutely. And it does also require, thinking of that, is when you go ahead outside of your developer area, every user that's going to interact with that app also needs that premium license as well, right? It's not just for the builder, it's for anybody touching the application. All right, so let's come here and we can go to users. There we are, that's the table we want. So we can go and select that, and now we have all 3 tables we need for our data. So we have, again, we're thinking about layers. That's the connection. That's all the hardware underneath that we're going to connect into. Well, hardware, software if we want. And now we can come in here and I'm just going to minimize that and get that out of the way and go back to my tree view. Now from here, what I want to do is just start putting in the parts to the app to make it kind of look nice and functional. So we're going to set up our first screen here. And the first thing we'll do when we set up this first screen is to insert something inside of it. Now, I have a couple design ways that I like to work. I know you have different ways. Everyone has their own like little niche way they like to build. For me, I always like to have a header. I think we're all kind of a similar way as that. But other than the header, I almost always put every object inside of something called a container. I think they work really, really well here for our apps, or especially our Canvas apps here, to make things like fit nice and neatly into our sections. So outside of the header that I'm going to put in here, everything else is going to be in its own container. You can even come in and put your header in a container as well.
So what's the advantage of the header then? The container, sorry.
Yeah, the container, it keeps, as it sounds, right? You think you're Tupperware, you're going to keep everything inside. You move one object, everything comes with it. So that's one really nice way of holding on to that. And what I like about containers, especially if you come to your tree view, it gives you that hierarchy feel of like, here's a big level, what's inside of that level. Here's another level, what's inside of that. It kind of self-contains that to be able to work with. So you have all the objects inside of it. You can set the height and the width to that parent level of that container as well. So it kind of becomes a little bit more dynamic that way.
It also gives you some interesting like drop shadow effects you can do, and it makes it really kind of stand out like a traditional application. And if you use things like the vertical and horizontal container, which are a little bit more a pain in the butt sometimes, it gives you responsiveness automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go in here. Let's just put in our header to start with, and then we'll play with the container afterwards. So if you come up in your search, you can search for header, or you can come down here. If you want to kind of navigate through, you could do that as well, but just do that, HEAD. There's our header under the layout area. And now you'll see it is one of our controls here that is in preview. So just for everyone out there, anything you see that's in preview, it's not perfect yet. They work really, really well, but there are times where some of these are just, they may have a bug or two from time to time as they get updated along the way.
Or 4 or 5.
Yeah, well we're not going to go that deep. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the header there. And it's I really like the header.
Oh, yeah.
Like we used to make almost exactly this by hand.
And it was a good 10-minute process.
Yeah, and now it's just done. It's just one thing done for us here where we can work with our header. Now you can see this header it's standardized with our theme color, so it already comes in stock with that. And what you'll notice inside of the header, we have an image of who's logged in. You can see it's the same profile image that I have up here with Microsoft there. We have a title here, that's the text that we can work with. And then we have this block here for another image as well. So if we wanted to upload a static logo or an image, we could put that right there. And the way that we can make all of those changes, upload and edit things here, is we have 2 areas. The first is up here on the top left, this drop down area, okay, where it's going to allow us to control all the properties of the selected object. It's called the property drop down box. Now, what I mean by properties is something you can change. I mean, you can edit, right? So if I wanted to come in here and change the base palette color, that's essentially the color of this that's right now, it's part of the theme. If I wanted to come in my drop down, I can choose, let's say the logo or the title. Let's say I choose title. that is now referencing the words screen 1. So we can see here we have the title is equal to, and then in our formula bar here, our app active screen name. So whichever one we're clicked on, the name of that screen, that's what's going to show up right here. In fact, to see how dynamic this is and how great it is, what we're going to do is let's rename screen 1 to make something that's a little bit easier to know what this is.
Health evaluation app.
Yeah, something like that. And you'll see that it does update from there. So what we're going to do is use our 3-letter qualifier, SCR. Okay, and we have that on our website about all the qualifiers of 3 letters that we like to use to make things a little bit easier to work with. Brian put a really great blog post out for that. And we'll call this eval.
Yeah, that'll work.
Right? Eval page or something like that, or student page, eval app, whatever we want to call it.
It's called Hungarian notation.
Yeah,
it's an old
something
90s way of building your
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? And if I click away, what you'll notice is the moment I click away within our screen, we can go back up to our header here. And when we come in, that's eventually going to be updated. It looks like it's taking its sweet time there for us. And it should be updated for the new name of the screen.
What if we just hard code it?
Yeah, that's going to be even better, where we can come in here and we could just delete that.
And then how would we put like a literal health evaluation app in there?
You know how sometimes you say things out loud to people and you're quoting somebody? And you go Brian said this, right?
Right.
It's kind of the same way here. You
Okay.
put your double quotes. And anything you put inside of double quotes is going to allow you to pass in your string or your text.
Okay. Cool.
So the same idea here, we can put our evaluation app up at the top.
Done.
There it is. And in fact, if I want to come in, I want to call our health evaluation app. There it is. We just edit along the way.
Now I'll set pane on the right there.
Yeah.
Could that same process be done over there as well?
So this is the second area where we can make changes to our objects. In fact, if you're someone who's new to this, you're probably going to hang out over here as much as possible, especially those of you that have a background in, say, PowerPoint or worked with Microsoft Word before. This properties panel that we have on the far right-hand side is really great because this will give you most, not all, but most of the properties over in the drop-down box to just edit right here in front of you. Like here's our title. If I come into the title, I can just click right here and I can edit the title. Let's say if I put an exclamation point and click away, it adds it in there automatically. So it gives us a way to work with our different properties without necessarily always having to go to the drop-down box. Now, there's a caveat to that. If you're ever using any code, you're not going to be able to do that from over here, right? You're going to have to do that in the formula bar.
But one of my favorite things you can do there is if you do want to do code, like the visible one right there, for example, you can click on the word visible and it will actually open up the property up top. Normally it will, at least there it is.
Go.
And then you can now do your code right up top now.
One of the great parts. It's like a quick look hot link to get right into it. So absolutely love that part. You can see here with the modern header, you get the ability to show the title on or off, show the logo. If you choose one to upload, you can do that, or just say, you know what, I don't have one for now. I'm just going to close that now and do it just like that. You can say, maybe I want my profile picture or not in there. So you have the ability to do all that. And of course, you could change your style, theme, color palette here as well, connected to the main theme you're on. So you have a lot of ways to play with this. And this is a really great way to get started. So now that we have our header, right? Here's our header that we're adding in. The next thing we want to do is add in our, essentially, the formatting or the layout of the screen. So what I want to do is maybe put in a container in here so we know like what goes where, right? So we could take this, and if we wanted to go ahead and insert our container, you can then just add that in, and here we can go put in a container. And you could say, I want to tuck that right there. I want to make it big. I want to make it small. And you can use this general container just to put stuff in. Now keep in mind, this is just the standard container. If you want this to be more responsive, like where the size of the app changes based upon, if I'm using a phone or a tablet, the vertical and the horizontal containers are going to be a better bet for you there. But just keep in mind, it may take a little bit more tweaking, a little bit more know-how to work with them. So if you're brand new, I suggest using the basic container for now, and then as you practice more and more, add in those other ones because they definitely help benefit us down the road.
Cool.
All right, so there's our container. Let's say I'm just going to put a little one here at the top, just like that. And just leave it like that. Now notice on my container, if I click away, it kind of has a bit of a border on it. So if I click back into it, we can go to our properties over here, and you can see that really there is no border. What we are seeing is that drop shadow that Brian mentioned, which is a great feature here that we can come in and say, all right, I want that drop shadow to be semi-bold. If If I click away, oh, look at that. That is nice to see. I can then move this around. You can even see it even bigger there. And if you add in different features there, but a border on top, you can really set this to pop off the screen like you would get with most of your modern apps and websites.
Even background colors.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could do fill colors on this. You could do a lot of different things to make this just change. So let's say, speaking of background color, I wanted to make this right here change colors. So I'll just go to the color property. And if I do that on the color property of my container, you can see it jumps me to the fill property, which is essentially the same thing. Usually color means text, fill is background, but in this case, there is no text. So it's kind of going to the fill. Now we could choose the standard colors here coming with, our theme and just pick one. So in this case, let's say I just choose one or choose another. But if you wanted to, you can bring in your own custom colors as well. You can have a sliding scale of I just want to pick something in here random. You can use hex or RGBA scaling, or even change the transparency level in here as well. So that you can control that just a little bit too, which is a cool little feature to play with.
So what is this container going to do for us?
So this container up here is eventually going to be our searching container. So it's like a search bar. But before we actually use it for that, what I want to do is let's go ahead and say this is a standard layout to begin with, and make a duplicate copy of this screen. Just so when we get to our second, maybe third, fourth, fifth down the road, we could just kind of copy and paste from there. So one of the great ways we can do that is over on the left-hand side where we see our screen, you have your 3 dots, your ellipses here that you can select, or you can right click and it gives you the same thing. And then you can select duplicate screen. What this will allow you to do is exactly what it sounds, just make another copy of it. So I have my first and my second, and you'll see everything has an underscore with it. So this is really great for us for if I want to have a standardized design for the entire app, there we go. We just have multiple screens.
And screen 2 will handle our form actions, right?
So,
our inserts, our updates.
Let's go ahead and rename it. I'm just going to double click on it. Or you could click on the 3 dots and then go to rename. And then we could just say SCR eval form.
Okay.
If we want, right? So we have the app, we have the form. We could call it something else if we want down the road, but there we are. We have our 2 screens. All right, so now we can always come back to this one when we're ready for it, but let's go ahead and return back to our main one and put in all the extra layers on top. Perfect. So here for our first area, this is where we're gonna put in our search bar. Now, we don't know what we're searching through yet, but we can at least add it in if we want, just to know hey, the layout I wanna have in here. So if you wanna put in your search bar, you put whatever, just click on the plus sign. This is gonna put it inside of the container, which means if I move the container, it comes with it, it moves with it. And then what we're gonna choose is one of our inputs. The input we're gonna choose is gonna be called a text input because we're gonna be typing in text to use as a search, right? So if we come in here and choose text inputs, there is our search bar that we've just added in. Now you could put it wherever you like, right, left, center, middle, kind of fit your spot wherever you like it. And then what we can do with this is control what it's supposed to be used for, right? So in this case, I'm gonna rename this text input canvas 1 because it's a very generic kind of name to something like here. If I double click, again, that's a quick way to rename INP search student or student search. You call it whatever you like, right? And then if you click away, that's the new name. And so now I know what exactly the purpose of this search bar is, this text input is when I get to it. Some of the things to keep note of when we're working with these is over on the right-hand side in our properties, we have our placeholder text. What should you prompt your user when they're just looking at this? So maybe I say search for a student. Sometimes spelling counts, there we go. And there we have, if I click away, it'll show up in there for us. So we can let our user know what exactly this is for. And then also another thing to keep note of in this behavior area with some of these modern ones. Okay, so if your mode, you have a single line, you can have multi-line where it just makes the box a little bit bigger. But one of the things that I want to make sure I'm always looking at here is this area right here called trigger output. Any area that you're typing into, this section right here, trigger output, what it controls, I'm just going to hover over for a second, is when does it actually capture what you're typing in? Right now with focus out, what it means is if I type anything into here, I have to click out of it and then it actually captures it, which in some cases could be good, but for most it might just be really annoying. So what I like to do is change that from focus out to delayed, which takes a little time, but it then works great for us.
Right, and the reason why we do it to delay it's not hitting the database over and over again, but also keep in mind that this property is only going to be seen on the new modern text input. So if you're using one of the classic text inputs, it's not going to be there.
Exactly, yeah, it's not there for you. So they'll go ahead and make that delayed. And then you can see down here as you go even further, alignment, start means it's going to go on the left-hand side, end is on the right-hand side, center, middle, right? They just kind of rename
Tons of lots of
justify,
things.
some of the different options there. And of course, all the styling that can come down here as well, like your fill, lighter, darker, or just the outline of the box. All right, so there's our text input, which is going to be used as our search bar. So let's go say, all right, what are we searching through?
Well, we want to see a list of students.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe show a picture of the student and then the name underneath it.
Make it as easy as possible to select a student, right?
Definitely.
So now,
especially first day of school, right?
My goodness,
exactly.
Yeah. As a former teacher, I know it's like I should think, okay, I have 30 kids to remember for this 20 minutes or 45 minutes. I have another 30, another. It can get really tough. So seeing that picture is really, really nice to have. All right, so what I'm going to do is add in another container in here to put in what we call a gallery. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a container first. And if we insert this container, and I'll just put it right underneath everything, what we could do is, if you want to give it some wiggle room there, some space you can to allow that. If you want to put a drop shadow in here at all or anything like that, you could do so. Sometimes I like to give it just a little bit of room on the edges here, just because it does allow, if you are doing that drop shadow, which again is on the right-hand side, it will definitely pop off the screen there for you, and it looks pretty cool in a lot of cases. Yeah. So now inside of this container that we have, we can click that plus sign, and what we are going to add is something called a vertical gallery. So a gallery lets you essentially view all of the records on a table or a data source, or in this case, we'll reference them as the items on that table. Think of like items on an array kind of thing that we're listing all those properties in. So if I choose a vertical gallery here, it's then going to ask me what data source.
We want to see the contact table, right? It's all of our students are in the contact table.
Absolutely.
Or treasures in this
Yeah,
case.
yep. So we'll go ahead and choose that, contacts. And then we'll go ahead and it'll connect to our data source. Luckily, Dataverse usually goes pretty quick here. And now we can see all of them in here. And I can drag this nice and big. There we go.
Now I want to see this a little different way. I want to see a big picture, though. Is that possible
Yeah.
to do?
So when I work with galleries, especially with the new modern designer here, if you hover over, you see this pop up here, which you can pin or unpin to go away if you don't like it. And the first thing is that data, that we always choose that data. So if you ever missed that, by the way, if you were like, oh, I moved it and I don't see that pop up anymore, just click away. Click back in, and it shows right back up. You can click data. So the way I usually do it is data, layout, fields. 1, 2, 3. In that order, because I think it just makes it easier to pick everything from there. So if we go to layout, this is where we can see some of, essentially, it's like a template or standardized layouts that we can choose from here within our gallery.
Yeah, the mistake I always make is I always thought this was the complete list. And then one day I just accidentally scrolled down. I'm like, holy cow, there's a whole bunch more underneath
You don't know
there.
it until you know it. And then down here,
look at that.
These are great, especially obviously if you have pictures. You can see there kind of gives you like a little like sample photo here. And the one that we're going to use is this one right here called title and subtitle on overlay, which is, it gives you like this text box that hovers right over the bottom edge of that image. So it looks really, really cool in the end. So if I click on that, there it is. We now have that set up for each of the different individuals. Oh, there's some people there. Okay, we have different pictures that we're working with that we can then see with their, oh, we don't have their name, do we?
We don't have a name. Yeah, how do we fix that?
Sign an email. Oh,
that's
fields.
our last option.
There we go, right?
Okay,
Data,
gotcha.
layout, field. So now a field, think of a field, it's your column. Which column from that data source do we want to show in these different areas? So that we can come here, and these are alphabetically sorted here, so that's why you're seeing title at the bottom. Okay, where you can choose, okay, what should be the title? If I come in my drop down,
Probably full name.
oh my goodness, there's so many here. But yeah, I think full name makes a lot of sense. So we can come down here and find full name. If I go ahead and...
It is alphabetical.
Did I
but
go
You
right
weren't an
past
English teacher,
it?
though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there we go. I'm trying to find first name. Let's see. Did I? Let me see if I type in full. There we go. We could just go a little bit faster that way and use full name instead. So I just type it in to kind of search through there as well. Then we have email. I think email works. If we had student ID, we wanted to put in
Right, or grade or
birthday, grade. That'll be another one for teachers to work with.
You know, what'd be interesting is to do grade this time, because this actually, grade actually points to another table. It's a lookup column.
Okay.
So let's see what would happen if we did grade.
All right, let's do, if I just type in grade, let's do let me do my G instead and see if we can get to that. Let's go all the way up there. Come on. And here we are. We're not seeing that here.
This is because it's a special column, right?
Yeah.
It's a lookup column.
So if it's a lookup column, well, how do we get there? Well, we then need to be able to just go find that directly from the gallery itself. So if you see here for the image, that's not just a column. It says something in it. It says this item dot photo. When working inside of a gallery, this item is essentially saying this row's photo column. So this item.photo, that's the big picture. It's going to go for each row on that row level for that individual student, pull in their photo. What we could do is we could go ahead and use the same thing if we wanted to go into our subtitle right here. I just clicked on the second area. We can go into the text property and we can try to pull it from there.
Cool. So I see the code up top.
So yeah.
This item's being the row. So by theory, if you type in .grade, would that pull the grade?
And if I see, there's .grade. Okay.
Ooh,
squiggles. So what do you suggest, Brian? If everyone sees this, because that usually tells me I did something wrong. Like, don't do that.
Well, you can hover over this now. Yeah. That will tell us something also. But the cool thing is, this is a lookup column, and lookup columns are a little bit special. Like SharePoint, this is basically it's a pointer to the other table. So by theory, my general guide is, what happens if we hit dot after that?
Yeah, that's the same way I think. I see squiggles, I put a decimal, and I think, okay, it's missing something.
So now we can see, it looks like that it is telling us that these are all the columns in the grade table. And then we see a grade name or
grade name right there at the top.
Cool.
And we click on that, and that should, if we had the grade in there, that would provide us the grade for that specific student.
So there's missing data in our case.
Yeah.
But that is working, looks like. Obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no squiggles, right? So it's telling us it's definitely pointing to something that's there. It's just, in this case, we have our sample data. It's just not being populated.
Right.
So that's perfect. That works great here for us. Now, one way to keep in mind, whenever you're trying to edit any of these fields, when we work within a gallery, what we always want to do all the editing on is something called the template cell, which when we stay in that vertical list, it's always the top one. In this case, when we're looking at the kind of like zigzag through here with all the images, it's going to be the top left. That's this area. If I click in the middle, I can see if I then have this area called Edit Gallery, which highlights the first cell or the template cell. The idea here is any changes you make to the template get applied to all of the others. So if you want to make changes again to say the subtitle, I click on the first one. And if I choose it here, it highlights the first one, and I can do it for all.
So rule of thumb then, hit the first record in whatever gallery you're looking at to change the template.
Yep.
And then second, third, fourth record, do just change the gallery's properties.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Gotcha.
And for me, because sometimes I'm like scroll down halfway, I'm like, I got to find how to get back up to the top. I'll always click somewhere in the middle, and that little circle will always select the template cell, which is great, that Edit Gallery button for us.
So how do we see this actually, how do we preview this to see how this work is actually looking right now?
Yeah, so the way to preview, so now that we know like kind of what we're seeing here, is up in the top right corner. This is where you could see some of the different options, the menu to work with. You can see there's our save icon, which most of us can.
I should do that now.
Let's save. Actually, good call. Let's save it now. Okay, and then right next to the save icon, to the left of it, there's that little. Now we're dating ourselves here. That's a VCR play button, right? So I'm going to go back there and click on that preview the app, and that is what's going to let me see what does the app currently look like at its current state. So now I can scroll through, I can see different students, and let me click on something. Oh, now I know something next needs to happen.
Right.
Even, didn't we say that we had this search bar here at the top? Like if I wanted to search through and let's say I see a name Maria, ooh, nothing happens.
Right.
So that's also a great way when we do the preview to like tell us what's the next thing we need to add in as far as the functionality of the app.
Yeah, and there's one more thing we can do to test as well. If John exits the preview by hitting the escape key or hitting the X in the top right and dismissing all this mess right here, we'll come back to that in a second. He could go to the database icon again, the connector area on the left, and we can right click on contact and select edit data.
Yep.
So if we want to see how that grade thing is working, we could pick our first student there that's in the list and actually make a quick change and just say, hey, does the darn thing even work? And we're not seeing the column yet, but when we hit that new column there's our grade.
I'm just going to look up, go find the grade, essentially just viewing the grade here.
All right.
And let's pick on, I think we talked about Maria, that was one there. and we double click. Let's pick first grade.
All right, sounds good.
And then click away, and that should save it for us.
And that's a way you can kind of test the data, get a quick view of the data. That's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of ways of doing it. You can also have that model-driven app open or look at your code as well.
Yep, and that's another benefit of working with Dataverse, is you're just working with the data right here. So let's close that. Let's see for Maria as it refreshes. Oh, there it is first. Perfect. I like that. All right, so that definitely gives us a way of that quick validation to make sure things are showing in here. So let's go ahead and fix some of the things that we just mentioned in our preview mode to make this work a little bit nicer. So first thing is the search. How can we get the search capabilities to work here within the app? Well, most of us would think, especially if you've never done this before, oh, I have to go over here and I have to change something on this search bar to do it on the gallery. Well, that's actually the opposite of what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to say for our data source, our gallery that's showing the data source, what is controlling it? What is actually interacting with it that makes this search capability work? So what we'll do is we'll say on the items property, or all of the rows, which are giving us the context right here, what we want to do is right before that, for the items, we want to search through our context. So you're going to type in search there. Now, if you just start typing in SEA, you'll see search shows up. But if I click on it, sometimes it just goes away.
Oftentimes.
So it's a little scary for a lot of us. So then you have to put it back in and say, all right, what am I searching with? Again, I'm doing my context. Okay, so you're going to search this data source, which is populating our gallery, comma, by what text option? Where are we searching with?
We call it INP something, right?
We did, right? That for the input. And that's this right here, the search bar, we called it right here, INP search student. So if I do INP for an input, which is a great, that's why we use our 3-letter qualifier, we could say, there's our search student, and then it's asking which column. Now I'm going to purposely get an error here. I'm just going to show you something. If I put a comma and then say which column I want to use, and let's do that full name again. I'll just type in full name. That's the column I want to search through, and close our parentheses. Notice we get that error. Again, I said I did that on purpose because we just talked about the squiggles. And if you see the squiggles on just one little piece, the red line underneath, it's often telling you you're missing something. And in this case, the search bar we're saying from the search bar, we're missing something that we need to extract from it.
Well, I remember that input had a whole bunch of properties about it, like the color, the fill, the font color, and the value that's in there.
If I click on it, it even says value under double quotes, what's actually typed inside of it. So that means if we go back into our gallery, what we need to do is right at the end of our input search, student dot, and what we want to use, is I put an extra piece in there, is dot value right there. And we want to pull from that property, whatever is essentially typed in there, store that and use that to search through our full name column, which is going to give us the ability to go and have this functionality.
Let's play.
All right, let's do another preview here. And now if I come in and search a student, and let's say we go back to Maria. Oh, there's Maria. Now, we are getting some bugs here every once in a while. Things you can see, my title field went away, so we can just go readjust that real quick. I could just show you here real quick. If I just click on it, it does look like it changed to this item.email. If I put title back in, I think we're going to be able to see it should say, full name, excuse me. I'm thinking primary columns all the time. There it is, Maria. And then let's preview once more. So there it is. If I remove that and then try a different name, and let's say I do something like AN. Well, what it does, because it's a search, essentially like it contains any of the full names that have AN in them, it's going to go find and return. So then I can go find whichever ones match up with that AN in either the first or the last name, because it is going to the full name.
The nice thing about the search box also is it allows you to search multiple fields. So John can go through and search for first name, last name, if you didn't have full name, and even things like the email address and title.
Just put a comma, and then add in whichever next field you want to be able to search through. So it's really nice capabilities for us to have for that.
Cool.
So it's really, really cool. That's a great search feature. Now what we need to do is, all right, we have the ability to go find our student. What happens when we actually find them?
You want to click on it.
I want to click on them and do something with it, right? So what we'll do is we want to go back to our gallery here, and we want to go to another property. And the next property to work with is something called the on select property. So when I click on something, what happens? So if I come to my drop down box, we'll go over here to scroll all the way down, and we're going to find, if I went right past it, there it is, on select.
A few things to note here. John has a whole gallery selected right now.
Yep, exactly. Not just one piece, but the whole thing. And again, you're going to try to make sure you point to that on the left-hand side here. It says Gallery 1. In fact, while we're at it, Gallery 1's a terrible name. That's super generic.
Right.
Let's go to rename that too. I'm just double-click, and let's call this Gal Students.
Yeah, and for the remainder of this session, we'll keep all these pretty generic at this point, but it is for the best practices John's doing now, you should ideally rename all your objects.
Yeah,
But for effort of time, we'll keep it pretty bland for the time being.
Absolutely. So back there for our gallery, on select, what do we want to do when we click on a student? Well, we want to, there's an actual function here that's called navigate. And what that will allow us to do is you can even hover over, and there's a little line over here that explains what each function does, transition us to another screen. So I can navigate, open parentheses, and then choose my next screen here. So then there we are, our screen eval form. And if I want to put any type of transition, if you like those type of things, a fade, a cover, uncover, those types of things, a comma will allow you to add in your transition.
Gotcha. Let's keep it simple for the time being, and then
we're
we'll
just going to keep it basic. And there
Awesome.
we are. All right, so now if I preview this once more, I can go find a student. Let's say we go back to our friend here, Maria, click on Maria, and we just went to another screen.
Awesome.
There we are. So now we can go to the next one. Now that we are able to get to this next screen, and again, for our main one over here, we could add in a border, a background color, things to make it pop off the screen a little bit more.
But we only have an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get right through that.
Can we go back there one more time?
Oh,
that main
absolutely.
screen. Now that a little pop-up happened earlier. How do we go to Maria? I'm getting tired of having to go back to that preview button every single time. Is there a way we can kind of shortcut
There's
that?
a nice little shortcut here. If you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, what it does is it gives you a way to preview the preview, I suppose, where now I can click on, say, Nancy here, and it will go right over.
Sweet.
So you have the ability to go ahead and use that as like a quick view kind of inside of this. Now that we're over here on our next screen, let's go ahead and make our next changes. So here on our next screen here in our changes, which we're on our eval form screen, what I'm going to do first and foremost is up here in our header. For the title, which I can now click on title and get right to it on the right-hand side. For the title, what I want to do is say, okay, who am I evaluating? I want to make it dynamic based upon the person I just selected, because it also gives us that validation to make sure like this is the actual student I'm doing an evaluation for. So we can come up here into our formula bar for our title, and then we can put in an ampersand, which is kind of like the concatenate operator here, and then put in a part of this. We could say, okay, the health evaluation app, and then say which student I want to do that for. Well, we just selected a student from the
Gallery. It was called Gallery 1, but whatever yours is
you call
called.
it, and I'll just write GAL, usually gets us to the Gallery
Right.
1 or whatever it is, Gal students, and then we could say dots, because there's our squiggles again. What do we want to choose? Oh, they've got selected.
And if you're a keyboard person, you can hit Tab to go between all those as well.
I get more of those single red line there, I need another one. And now we can pull in, if I want, our full name. And I'll hit Tab, and now it's going to pull that in for us. Now, one of the key things to keep note of is because we're just saying this text plus this dynamic value, put them together with one, we have to force in that space, right? It's not there right now, so we need to come in here and put in, I'll put a colon, space, something like that. And now you can see, we can immediately see that with just a nicer look and feel for that. So it's a little bit more dynamic for us.
So how about we put maybe a form in one location and then the actual old data in the other location?
I think that's a great idea. So I'll take this header area or this search bar box that we already had, and I'm actually going to make this for our form. I'm just going to drag it down and put it down here and use it for our form. So just might as well reuse it since we already have it. Do something like that. And then I'll add in another container right here. So insert, just so we can get our layout done, container. And we'll put in a container right there. And this will be able to go ahead and be used for our old data. Our old data, right?
And of course, this app is yours. You guys make whatever you wish in this app, and you choose your own colors and your own theme. You can't break that part of this. So enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what you could do is then decide, all right, let's go one at a time. Might as well go top down since it's nice and simple to do that. I'll click on this container at the top, and inside of the container, what we want to add in is something called a table. Okay, this table is a little different than the gallery where you can see all the records. It looks like an actual table.
Excel.
Yeah, it comes with headers, comes with rows. It works great. I love the table here because when you click on table, choose your data source. In this case, is going to be our evaluations again.
Now keep in mind, you may have saw this, but this is a preview feature also. So you might see some quirkiness.
Yeah, it's going to be
Make
fun.
sure you save frequently. Control S is a shortcut to save if you wish also.
And even if that save icon there is grayed out, Control S often overrides it anyway. So it's a nice little trick there. So health evals right there. And it's going to load that in. And now we can go ahead and make this full to our container, which is, again, another great feature about the container. Just make it as big as we need. And from here, we've just done the data. Now we could do the fields. I will say, just as Brian mentioned, because it's in preview, if you work with fields here, you can choose your columns and you can drag and drop, in fact, to reorder the columns. But what I like to do is actually choose fields on the right-hand side in our little properties panel.
Because of the bugs.
It's because of the bugs. I've just kind of you've seen a few things. You kind of know what you're dealing with every once in a while. If I choose edit over here, it's going to give me the same thing, except this layout here is much simpler and easier to work with and actually works better more often than that other pop-out.
Okay, cool.
So now we have to decide which fields do we want to actually show in here.
Let's put some basic information's fine.
Yeah, some
it'll
basic
be the
stuff,
idea after
right?
we see the first
so
two fields. Yeah.
Let's see. We have created on, evaluation date, health, number, measurement, all these other things. Let's say we want to add ones that aren't in here. You could just choose add field at the top, and then you can come find the ones that you want, like who's doing the evaluation. Or we can also come down here and say, which student is it for? In this case, which treasure is it for?
In our case, we've already checked that student, so we know where we're at, so we don't really need that in this case.
We don't necessarily have to, but we could if we wanted to, or just say, you know what, I don't want it, I'll skip it. Right? So we're just adding them in here. And if, let's say we don't want something, like let's say we don't need to see created on, we just click on the three dots and we remove it. So it's really simple to work with here. You just go ahead and find in which one you want to show, which order you want. You can come in and do your order by dragging and dropping. Okay. And you come in that drag and drop, it just goes and reorders the columns or the fields order there. And then you could see pretty much whatever you need. So it's really great to come in and just decide what data points do you want to see on here. Now, once you got that decision made, you can close that out and there's our table. You can come on the right-hand side and make all your changes to this as far as the look, the feel, the color, the layout, all that good stuff, especially over here, your font colors and header colors.
Would you mind previewing this?
Absolutely.
One of the things I love about the table control, it is preview, and the gallery I like for other reasons, but this, what I like about this is if John hits those little down arrows next to each of those columns, you do get things like sorting and even filtering in this control automatically. So that's a really big perk. Ours is grayed out right now for some other reasons right now, but that's fine. But this kind of gets you a really good set of free features you don't have to code in.
Absolutely. And you can set this up so everything fits all in one screen here, or you can just allow the scrolling back and forth, right? Whatever fits you, whatever model you're trying to make, an app you're trying to make, you can have full customization there.
Cool.
All right, so now that we have that, okay, we're seeing the past ones. Okay, let's go ahead and do our property here to say, okay, how do we want this to be able to be referencing the certain things?
That's right, because right now we're seeing all past evaluations, right? Not just for ones for Maria.
And that says it, and you can tell that because if we click on the table, it's all of the items. We're just seeing the data source. That's every record there.
Now, one of the tricks you can do is you can see the code up top. If you click on that, you'll see a down arrow that when John clicks that, you can actually kind of preview the table that way also, and you can see what students were getting.
I remember the first time Brian told me that, I was like, what? I don't have to have the data source open somewhere else, so that's so much better. It's definitely a handy thing to have, and that works with every data source, not just here with Dataverse as well. So definitely something we want to work with. So now what we want to do is say, all right, if this gives me all of our records, how can we narrow down the scope? I'm kind of doing like a shape here on purpose, like a cone, right? How do we narrow down the scope to only for the one that I've just selected?
How do we filter that data, John?
Oh, actually, I think you just said it out loud. Filter is probably the answer there for us. We want to filter our data to only the selected student.
Gotcha.
Right, or contact.
So we could use search here, but in this case, filter is going to be much more efficient because we're doing a very precise search. Where searching is more broad and in this case,
like it contains.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in this case, we want to go ahead and go to the far left of our formula bar here before our data source, and we are going to use filter. I always like to, again, I'll type it in, I'll kind of see, make sure I capitalize F and all that stuff, and then put in open parentheses, because it does get rid, if you just hit tab, it'll get rid of your data source, and I just don't like that sometimes. So I'll then say, all right, I'm going to filter a data source, comma, and then essentially we're saying how. How are we filtering it? So what we need to say is, okay, which column do we want to filter on, and then how are we matching it to something else? So in this case for us, because we are going to the individual student, for us, it is called a treasure, okay, is our student there, dot, and then we're gonna go and find their record that comes with it. So that should be their contact information.
Now what is that contact there?
So the contact is pulling in the information for that individual student at the data source and that lookup that's available to it.
Okay, this is really a special kind of column here, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing you saw there in treasure, that's a lookup column, right? Mm-hmm. And it's pointing to the contact table. Well, in this case, the dot contact means give me the unique identifier for that given treasure. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of helping us. I'm going to jump to the table and give me the ID out. Yep. So that's kind of what John has done here.
Okay, and then we're going to say where that contact is equal to the one that we've already selected, right, in our gallery. So we want to go to our gallery, and again, I renamed mine Gal Students, dot selected, whichever one I've chosen, and then what we can do to match based on the criteria we're already looking up to.
And we're already in the contact table in this case.
Yeah.
So we're already there.
Yep. So this case, we want to go ahead and pull in, if we're at the contact level, we're going to say, oh, well, there's the contact, right? That would make sense. Those are the things that match from one ID essentially to the other. Close that parentheses, and now we're only seeing the record for that selected individual.
So remember the rule, guys. If the table name matches the column name, that is your primary key, your unique ID for that given table. That's what John has done here.
Absolutely. So that is allowing us to make sure we're only seeing them for the students. And that's, of course, the best case. You want to do that for all of your different ones that are matching up, again, based on the lookups that you're providing there. All right, so there we are. We now have our table. Let's go ahead and do our form. This is a form that, just like you would use like a SharePoint form or just on paper, how do we add, edit, update, work with the data at the data source level? So I have this container here that's going to be helpful for us. I like to have forms with a different color in a lot of cases, just to know that that's a different thing than everything else. So we can use a different color if you like, and then go ahead and put the plus sign there, and we are going to add in the modern form. Like we've been saying over and over, anything in preview here, there are times where this can get a little glitchy.
So save now.
Yeah, save now, save often, because there's things that can happen. There's like, oh, I don't even know what just happened. So go ahead and make sure you're saving at whenever you can. Just remind yourself every 30 seconds or so to save it. It's definitely a best practice. And then we'll talk about publishing all that stuff later on, right? Mm-hmm. So now we can come in, I click away, click back in. I'll always do that if I want to go ahead and select data. Now, what are we connecting to? What data source?
Well, it's a health evaluation this time.
Right.
So we're doing our 3 times a year. Thrice.
Yep. There we go. So we're not adding a new student. We're not adding a new user. We're adding a new evaluation. That's the way I like to think about it. Like, where are we writing
it
to?
It built the form for us already.
No, that's different. Usually it doesn't do that for us, but SharePoint, it'll do it each time, which is really nice. A lot of times it does not build it for you. In this case, you saw that it just populated data for us.
Right.
Now, what you could do if it doesn't populate the data for you, if you're like, I don't see what you're seeing, what you could do is you can click on fields. Again, you could do it from this.
Save one more time,
real
quick.
Yep, save again. And what I like to do is not this pop up right on the object, but I'll use it over on the right-hand side. Again, I like this. This is the classic form. We'll bring this up as well. I just think it's a little bit nicer to work with, and because I get this pop out right there.
Gotcha. So this form, the pieces that are not added automatically are going to be any kind of lookup column you have. We have 2 of them. We have the treasure, contact, and we also have the user,
the evaluator.
Evaluator, right? So those 2 are not in this list right now because they're both lookup columns.
So there you go. We could just go find them here. Evaluator, treasure, add. I mean, it's really that simple for us to do. It's really nice and neat. And
now we're going to put them on here, but we're not going to show them per se.
So what I like to do is if there's something that like I know I don't really need, I'm going to hide away, I'll put them down to the bottom of our form. it will go ahead and move them. And sometimes you can see, again, a little glitchy every once in a while. The fix around that is save, and you may need to refresh your browser. Okay, so we may do that real quick. So just give us a second to go ahead and do that. I'm going to just do a nice little hard refresh. So now that we have our data in here, and again, if we need to, we select the form, make sure we choose the entire form there. We can do our edit fields again. And if you want to move things up and down, there we go, evaluator, treasure at the bottom. If I want to hide things, I put them at the bottom. Why would we hide evaluator, treasurer? Well, if I'm actually filling this out, do I really need to put my name in there if I'm logged in?
It's extra work.
Right? Do I need to put the student in there if I've already selected the student?
Right.
I'm just seeing more than we need things that are already in there. So we'll need them in the form. We need to actually write it to the data source, but we don't need to actually see it each time. So I'll know later on I'm going to put that somewhere down there.
So there's really 3 rules we want to do. We want to default to have the current user that's logged in, have them as the evaluator, have the treasure you selected in the previous screen, default, and then hide it hopefully.
Absolutely.
And then also, I don't want it to pick that date, so maybe default to today's date.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do that. So that means what we can do is we can close our field since we have what we have selected. In some cases, you may want to change the inputs to numbers and sliders and other things. We're not worried about that here for today because we don't have that option. But what we want to do is let's start with the date. We'll just kind of go top down. So for the date right here, if I go here and look at my form, the evaluation date it just says pick a date. Well, like Brian mentioned, let's make it as easy as possible for the user. Just put today's date. Now that's when this is a new record. But if we're doing editing an old one, maybe, I forgot to do attendance yesterday. I forgot to do whatever, to plug this in last night after where I was just leaving. I want to say, well, if I'm editing an old one, I might want to be able to change the date from there. So to be able to do that, what we need to do is select the actual date picker, which is called the data card value, which is that second section inside of it. And what we want to do is then go into our formula bar. And then up in the formula bar, there are all of the different options that we have, or the properties we can work with. Now you could see, you could just scroll up and down, and there is one called selected date. So essentially by default, or the default date property, in a lot of cases, the old date picker gives us that. The selected date, we could then just hard code it.
Oh, it's grayed out.
Oh, and actually, I can't click on it either. Now, that tells me something happened, right? There's something that's holding on to this, essentially locking this down so I can't make those changes. In fact, if I were to click away, click back into my evaluation date, I can even see the lock there, right? That lock there is saying, well, Microsoft or PowerApps wants to hold on to that, keep that the way it is, because we're essentially changing the way the record is being displayed from the data source.
Let's try to protect this from ourselves.
Yeah, right. And that's also where we're seeing parent.default, right? If there's any default records at the data source level, let's say you have a choice column and a default choice to submitted, or a date column, and a lot of times we work in SharePoint, just default it to today when I create a new record. That's what would show up here. That's the default at the parent level. So it's protecting us from ourselves, like as Brian mentioned, but in some cases we want to change things our own. So we want to go ahead and unlock this and make it our own.
So anytime we want to change a form from this default, we have to unlock first.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. So if I do that, I want to click on the whole card again. So I'll just click away, click back in. There is our little lock. There's 2 ways to unlock. You can either right click on it and choose unlock, or if you come over here to advanced, since some of us are just living in this area a lot, advanced here, you can unlock from the top. I'll be honest with you, I usually choose wherever my mouse is closest to at that point. So if I'm over here doing stuff, I'll just unlock from here, or I'll right click and unlock and do the same thing. So you can go ahead and unlock that, select the value, and now in our selected date, we can override the default coming from our data source and say what we want to put in here. If we want to put in today's date, just standard all times, there's an expression called today, where it's today, open, close parentheses, and it'll give you today's date and time, at midnight, for the date. But what if you want to edit? How do we determine if I'm editing a record or not in order to either say today or the original date? And I kind of say it, if I'm saying it out loud, well, if I'm editing one, do this. If it's a new one, do that. The word I keep using is if. And in fact, just like you would do in Excel, you're putting in a conditional statement in here, if. And we can evaluate something. Now, we're not going to say if today, because that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So what we'll do is what we need to evaluate is our form. And thinking back to our properties on the form itself, so I'll just go form here. Form 1 is the one we're looking at.
Default name, yeah.
It's default, right? If form 1 dot, this will pull in all the properties, all the things we can change. There's one part in here that controls if it's in edit mode or new mode or view mode. I'm saying them there on purpose so that we can try to evaluate, and that's called the form mode.
So what you're saying here is this same form can be used to edit a record or insert a record. If we're trying to edit the record, we don't want to put today's date on there. We want to keep the original value. Oh, by the way, also, John is using today in this case. We could also use a now function to get the time as well. Today will always default you to midnight.
Yeah. And now is great for like appointments and other things that you need that like hour or minutes, and you can control that as well. So we're going to say if form1.mode. So if form1's mode property equals form mode dot new. And I can even just see it from here. I'll just choose that one. If form1's mode property equals form mode dot new, then here's our comma for our true statement. What do we want to show? Well, if it's new,
Want to show today's date?
Today's date works great. Let's do today. If it's not, so this is our if false branch.
Parent.default?
Parent.default will return the default, but don't we want to return the one we're editing?
Oh, sure.
Right. So it could be either one, right?
Right.
So we could say the one we're editing, this item, this rows.
Dot valuation date, right?
Dot evaluation date. And I didn't know which date it was, so I just started typing in date because often if it says the word date in the title, you could just figure out which date you want to work with. There we go. And now we're pulling that in.
And again, this code you're going to find in our cheat sheet. You'll find in the notes of the class as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we have it. We're now saying if the form is new, put in today's date. If not, put in the original date that we're editing.
So you keep on saying this form is new or not new.
Yeah.
What happens if we hit the play button right now? This is one of the common mistakes that everybody's going to be seeing right now. So try hitting the play button yourself and see what you see, because it's going to look like, ooh, a pucker up moment.
Yeah, this is a bang your head against the table moment, right?
Yeah. This is the most common question we get asked when we're doing this type of class, and it's the no item to display.
Yeah. Like what am I? It's like, what do you mean no item display? I just want to make a new one, or I want to do something else.
So what is that? What's causing that, John?
So the way that the causing it, and actually seeing is believing in a lot of ways. So I'll show you this. So the way it's causing is if you click on form 1, what we want to do is with this form, if we're in edit mode, like Brian was saying, we need to say what we are editing. If we're in new mode, it's all blank. It's kind of just return there. So if we think about that, there's got to be something in the form to tell it what to edit. If you go to your property drop-down box here on the top left, and you scroll down, there is a property called item. Gallery has items. The form has item. So that would be the one record we're editing.
And that property is only used in edit mode.
Exactly. So we click on item and look at our formula bar.
So I would want, ideally, to be able to edit whatever you selected in that top gallery or table in our case.
Exactly.
I think it's called table 1, probably because it's the default property.
Yeah.
Right?
And by the way, this is why it says no item to display, because it's blank. It's the same thing, right? So now what we need to tell it is which item to display. So we're going to go reference our table, which is the one we added up here. It's called table 1. Table 1 dot selected.
Oh, so that's going to send the whole row down below.
Absolutely.
Now, how do we also go through and default that form? When you first hit the screen, it should be a new mode, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is the best way, right? We should only edit when we click the edit button. Okay. Otherwise, always make a new one.
Right.
That should be the best way. Or view, or you can have a new button. Other ways. But again, with edit, only edit when I choose to edit. So that means on form 1, if I have the whole thing selected again, on the right-hand side, there is a default mode property. And I like to do it from here because, again, it's just right in front of our face there. We can change the default mode from edit to new.
So how about you put the play button now?
So now if I push play,
hey-o!
There's today's date.
Nice.
And we can go ahead and use that.
And I noticed that we have things like the drop-down box is already configured, the multi-line text is all configured. It read that all in a Dataverse, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So our last two pieces to edit really are going to be those two drop-down boxes.
Yeah, that's it. And we're almost done with the whole app at this point. So let's go ahead and look at the last two pieces, which is down here in our form, evaluator and treasure, and then fill those in. Say by default, what do we want to put in these areas? Okay. Remember, we did say to hide them, so we got to remember to do that.
Yep.
And then put in our buttons, and we're pretty much done.
So we got to unlock the two fields, what you
Yep,
taught me now.
exactly here.
We're going to unlock those two. So right-click unlock on both of them, guys, not just the one.
I'll do both of them right away.
Okay.
And then we're essentially doing something similar to Bolt. It's a little bit different because it's a different table, but we're doing something similar for Bolt. So if I click on, this is going to be our evaluator.
Let's start with the easy one. Let's do treasure first.
Okay. I was thinking about that too. Let's do treasure first.
So this one, we want to default to whatever treasure you selected in the previous screen.
So in this case,
Our same code we did before, right?
Yeah, our items is all of the choices for the treasures or the students that we have. We can go over to our property drop-down box here, and if you scroll actually up, we're going to go up this time to the default selected item. It's a drop-down box. We have all of our items. Which one are we going to select by default? Right here. And this one, again, it's just saying, give me whatever selected originally. We don't want that original selection, so we're going to get rid of this.
And what's that gallery called? We wanted whatever was selected in that previous gallery.
Yes.
Maybe type in GAL.
Yeah, it's like essentially the name we have up here, right? Because we've already referenced that.
Right,
so
right.
GAL.
Oh, there it is.
Gal students dot selected.
Does that work?
And,
look at that.
Look at that.
So we didn't have to do dot whatever column because it's going to send the whole record into that and default that. And that drop-down box is the whole record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's looking for. So it's perfect. So that one's good. Well, let's do the evaluator. And because the visible, the hide, we can do that pretty quick here as well. So let's do the hard one. All right. This is probably one of the more complicated parts of working with Canvas apps is figure out how to navigate across relationships and lookup columns.
Okay.
So here when we work with our lookup to our evaluator, what we want to do, just like we do with the treasure, is go to the default selected items.
Now in this case, we want it to default to you since you're logged in. We're going to do a few new things here. Every user that's signed in has a record, every user that's allowed to sign in, let me phrase that, in this environment, has a record in the user table. And we're going to use that user table here to look up your actual record.
Yeah, and we have to compare, right? Compare who's logged in with compare to that record, and when they match, that's what we're going to show.
Based on the email address?
That's probably the best way, right?
Yeah,
It's an
okay.
easy way to look up those values because they're going to be unique, right? I can have the same name as someone else, first and last name, but my email is going to be different, so we can get in contact with them. So that makes total sense there. So now for our default selected items, what we want to do is look up. Okay, you can see here we do have our look up expression here.
So similar to a filter syntax.
Yeah, it's the same idea, right? It's the same idea as our filter. Find this where this equals that.
This is more of a one like a sniper approach. Though. So you can return one record versus filter can return n number of records.
So we're going to go ahead and look up our users. And then through that lookup on the user table, comma, what are we using? Okay, well, we're going to use that email that Brian mentioned. So if I just start typing in email, we can find out which one is best. And primary email in Dataverse is the email one, essentially, that we're going to be using. So we're going to go ahead and use primary email. So we'll say where the primary email is equal to the user that's logged in.
How do you do that? Your email address? So can we retrieve that easily?
We just said user, right?
Right,
Said it out
right.
loud. So if I just type in user, there's an expression for user. There's the users table, but there's also user expression. If I click on that, and then I think open parentheses, close parentheses, bring back the entire user record.
And when all else fails, hit dot.
All else fails, there's email. And this is how we can go ahead and find that match. And look, there's my name that just showed up there.
Awesome. So again, this code you're going to find in that cheat sheet. So feel free to copy and paste it. Make sure you select the individual drop-down box and not the entire card around the drop-down box. John, would you show how not to do it?
So when we do this, if we're going to come in and we're talking about trying to hide it here, if I come in here and just select this, I don't want to be able to come into what's called, it's the visible property, right? And to hide it from here, I don't want to do it on that because that's just the one piece. Select the whole thing, just like this, the entire thing. Here's the key. If it shows up over here on the right-hand side, that's the one you want. If I go in here, here's my little trick on it. I'm like, I can't, let's see, where's
Default selected items?
It is over here, I guess, visible, but you want it to be like by itself, less options. So if I come over here, there's our visible. We can just go off from there.
Sweet.
Really nice. There's our treasure, same thing. We want to, that's the one that's visible, off. It's the same thing as going to our drop down, visible, false.
So all we're missing now is really a button to save.
Button
right?
to
And
save and-
maybe one to cancel.
Yeah, that's really all we need. So now here's I love these new buttons. Okay, the way that we have the new button coming in here, buttons have always been pretty standardized in Canvas apps, but now what we do have, and this is relative to a few months now, we have the ability to have our button with an icon built inside of it.
That's nice, yeah.
So we can have it where it's really, really obvious what's working now. It's where I'm getting excited about a button. But hey, it's really helpful. You used to have to put it all together and can tie them and group them. Now it's all one object. So we can insert a button right here at the bottom of our form. After we finish everything, click button.
Maybe do 2 buttons, one for a cancel.
Might
also.
as well while we're here. And where did my
I think it put it
button
up top,
go?
outside
there
the
it is.
container.
Same color. So if it's outside of the container, right, you can see I can move it around if it lets it up here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and delete that and do it again and make sure it stays in my container that has my form in it.
So you have the container selected now, and you're going to do the same operation,
Yeah,
insert.
absolutely. I'm gonna insert once more here. Go ahead and put my button there. And it should be at the top of the container. Look, see, I can't get it out. That's what you want, right? Because you know it's part of this object itself. So there's our button there. I'm going to go click back into my container. Let's insert our next button as well and put them.
Okay.
I always like to put them right next to each
So
other.
one for
right?
cancel, one for...
Submit, save.
Yeah,
Call
sounds good,
save,
yeah.
right? So I'll do this first one here, and I'll call this our save button.
How do we do the icon thing you're talking about?
Oh yeah,
earlier?
it's right here, right underneath. So icon,
okay.
you can click the drop down, and it's the save icon.
Easy
You can see
peasy.
your list there. I like the names. The names have changed a little bit. So if you know a little bit of Canvas apps and you're coming back, like these new ones are, some of the names are just a bit different. So I'm still getting used to them every once
the
in a
trash
while.
one threw me off.
Oh, every
Yeah.
day it throws me off. But you can have your save icon. That will allow you to go ahead and use that. There's our save, which obviously makes sense. And here's the icon before, the layout. You can choose icon before, after, text only, or icon only. So it makes it so the icon's clickable, it has the background, the button has like almost a 3D effect. You can make it bigger, make it smaller, so it's just that one object. I like this a lot. I tend to use icon before a lot as well, but the icon only is really great, especially if you just want it to sit in a corner somewhere and just make it really easy. Click on it, go ahead and do something. So there's our save. You can go ahead if you want to then scroll down here. The style and theme is also something to take a look at with these new buttons. The type here, if it's primary, means it captures the color that we're working with. If I change that to secondary, see how it whites it out. So it's like not the one you want to click all the time, right? You can also have all these other options, outline, subtle, and transparent. Just depends on what you're choosing. Transparent kind of like hides it away. I tend to use the primary, secondary a lot because I think it's really, really helpful for the user to know, oh, that one's a different color. That's probably the one I want to choose most.
It honors the theme colors in this case.
Absolutely. And you can change that here, color palette as well. If you wanted to change that to look like something else, you can absolutely choose that. All right, so there's our save. And then let's go ahead and design our cancel
button.
Might as well do cancel while we're here.
Something to cancel will then kind of reset the form back to its previous state
Exactly.
and then send you back home.
Yep,
Maybe.
exactly. And cancel, you do have in here, you don't have a cancel option, but if you want to have something with like an X in it, it's called dismiss now. It took me a while to keep reminding myself what it's called, but it is called dismiss now, which is an X right here. There is one inside of a circle as well if you like that, but we can take that big one there. And then you can scroll on down here. We can make this our secondary. So it's, see the difference there? I know save is the one I want to click on most. What it can also do is the icon style, outline or fill. The X doesn't change too much, but if I do that with my save, you can see that it definitely makes it a little bit more pop off the screen there if you like it that way. All right, so now what we can do is say what happens when we click the button, right? That's the big goal here.
Okay.
So
well, I think it should hopefully save the form or submit it somehow,
So-
and then
the other one resets it, right? Kind of just one goes, one stops kind of thing. So on the save button here, you'll go to a property called onSelect, which is usually the default one you'll see when you click on it. Sometimes it might go to your title if you change the words on it, but the onSelect property is what we want to go to. Okay, then we want to say what happens when we click on it for save. It's actually called submit form. So submit form. And by the way, the key here is you want the word form in these commands. So if it's working with the form, the word form is in the command. It helps narrow down which one you're choosing.
Right. So there's a reset and those kind of things.
Exactly.
Outside.
Because you'll see, especially like reset or reset form. Well, if it's a form, reset the form itself. So we'll submit form 1, and then we can close that out.
Is it that easy for updates and inserts?
So that's an insert. If this was an update, it would be able to submit the same way, right? But we may have to put in maybe a notification or something like you've made an update or anything. But yeah, did we just come in here?
Wow.
We click this button, it sends it to the data source.
Cool. Well, can we also have it then put a notification saying, and then maybe send them back home?
Absolutely. And that's something that we actually probably don't want to do on the button itself though, because the button does submit it, but we want to make sure it actually gets there.
Oh, so if we put this in this button, it might error out, then send you home.
And send us there, we'll never even know. So what we want to do instead is let's go to the form, and on form 1, what we can do is we've done the item property, which is, again, big headache for a lot of us. But there's another set of properties here. If you scroll down, that let us know what we can do if something happens to the form.
So see on error, on failure,
on reset, on success. Let's do that one. Let's just say success anytime.
Okay, yep.
On successful submission of the form, what do we want to do? Well, this is where we're saying, okay, on success, let's go ahead and navigate. Let's move out of here.
Okay.
Let's navigate to our other screen. So
Perfect.
Let's go back to our main one there. Let's also semicolon do another thing in this order, right? Okay. Let's also notify our user.
Okay, sounds good.
Let the user know with some type of message what we want to do.
And bravo or whatever.
Yeah, like you did it, right? You did it.
And of course, we can pass data to that and show like for Brian or for
and you could use your same like ampersand gal this dot selected and
just
all
like
that.
a header up we do.
Exactly, right? Okay. Now, when you do your notification, if you put in a comma after your text, this will allow you to say what type of notification banner it is. Is it green for success? Is it red for failure? Is it like a grayish color for information with the little exclamation point or the I? Do you have like a yellow orange for your warning, right? You get to choose the color here. A lot of times we've probably seen them a couple times, just normal Microsoft. So we can choose one we want. And then if we do one more comma, we can say how long it lasts.
Now, before you do that, notice that little tooltip that's popping out here. It's kind of walking John through the code. Yeah. So if you ever are lost, see if the tooltip pops up, and it might be able to help you get unstuck.
It doesn't show up all the time, which is sometimes frustrating, but when it's there, it's awesome. It tells you the exact syntax you need, and that's exactly what you want. In this case, I'll make it
3 seconds.
Milliseconds. So let's do 3,000 milliseconds, so 3 seconds, and then close it out.
Yeah, if you did not do that, it was going to make you hit the X to actually close it out each time.
It does eventually time out, but hitting the X
It takes like 5 or 10 seconds. Yeah. How do we then reset the form also? Can we do that as part of the same operation?
So what we can do is say, all right, if it's successfully added in, we have our banner, we're navigating over. What we want to do is take our form, one more here, and flip it back to new mode. Essentially,
take back.
Take it. Well, we were in new mode and we're writing something. Let's make sure it's in new mode again, just in case it's holding on to anything.
Yeah, so if he did not make the changes about to make, it's going to flip to edit mode as soon as he inserts that new record. Yeah. So it's going to go back to its original unconfigured state.
Yeah, so we want to go new form again. The word form is in there. New form, edit form, reset form, submit form. All those, make sure you see the word form in there. New form, form 1. And
Sweet.
That should do that. So that's our save button. We're nearly done. We just have one more thing to do.
That's 2 more things.
Oh, 2 more. Oh, you're right. Good catch. We want to cancel this. Okay. If we want to say, oh, I typed something in here, it's not really what I want. Let's go ahead and reset the form. So on select of the reset for the cancel button, we want to reset the form. Okay. And we'll do the same thing. It's essentially the same thing we did with our submit, our on success for that. Not only do I want to reset, but make sure it goes back to new mode, just in case.
Maybe navigate them back to home.
Yeah, we can navigate again, right? We're kind of doing the same idea here, and we'll do our navigate. And again, we're just rinse and repeat, add the same things over and over. And now we have the ability to get back in to our area. I'm going to save this real quick.
Let's play this bad boy.
Let's play it.
We'll learn our last thing we missed.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so let's come on in here, and we have our date. We could pick a status. We could do a period, and let's just test the cancel button.
Yep.
Right, real quick. Okay, that works. Let's go back in here. Let's do another new one, and let's do this. Let's do that. Let's do blah.
Yep, good enough.
And we'll do a number. We'll do a number. I'm just putting random stuff in here, and then I hit save.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, there's my banner.
Very nice.
There's my banner.
when you go back to it, let's go back to it. Maria again. Wah.
What happened?
So this is a bug that we found, at least during the filming of this.
Yeah.
Bug feature, we'll find out later. But hopefully this fixed by the time the recording happens.
Yeah.
How can we debug why our record is not here?
So right now we know, well, at least we think the record was sent. We got the on success message which tells us it's written to the data source. So to figure this out, like let's go to the data source. Let's make sure it's actually there.
Okay.
If it's there, then we can go kind of backtrack to the controls and see what's going on inside of the controls.
So it's not showing for Maria at least. So let's see what happens.
So I'm going to go over to data. We're going to go to health evaluations and we're going to edit data. And it's not there. It's not showing the actual record. So it's writing, but it's writing to the wrong treasure.
Okay, so we found this when we were filming this earlier. We found a few bugs.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind, these are preview features. Yeah. We could use the old form, probably wouldn't have this issue, but by time, a year from now, that form will be hopefully in general availability.
Yeah.
So let's show a few ways that we found that we had to fix this.
Yeah.
One was refreshing the table, because we saw that earlier also.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the little combo box, the drop-down box there, not combo, but drop-down here, had an issue with it.
Yeah. So here's one way to look at it is for us here, the treasure card, the data card itself. I'm actually going to turn it back onto visible for a moment here. For this drop-down box for the treasure, one of the things we're noticing is it's not choosing the correct person. For some reason, one or another, it's just not giving us what we want in here when we select somebody, and that's on the data card value. So if I choose the data card value here, one of the things that we get with the data card value, because it is a drop down, are different parts of the record that it wants to show in the drop down, different fields it wants to display in the drop down.
It can get confused there.
Yeah, and maybe it just doesn't know which one, so it's just choosing a random thing and it's not finding the correct lookup for it. So if you go to data card value and then go to fields, this is where it's probably making the mistake. Where we want it to show the full name, because to write it in for that student, but it may be grabbing something that's just not accurate.
Not finding the match.
Yeah.
So this is where I see these combo boxes all the time.
Yeah.
So one of the tips with combo boxes, which can, as the name implies, have multiple fields, you want to remove the ones that aren't going to help you find that match.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and select the three dots and remove the fields, the columns that we just don't want to appear in this area. The second I did that, notice right here, it just says Maria. It just popped up. It wasn't there. It was just empty. Now all of a sudden it shows up. So it's actually now identifying the correct selection.
Gotcha. Now we showed how to already hide that, so let's keep it in there for the time being.
Yeah.
There was one more little gotcha that I found also, and that's when it wasn't refreshing the data set properly. So what I had to do is go to whenever the screen lit up, to go ahead and refresh the table at that point. To refresh it, you normally don't have to do that with galleries, but for some reason this preview table, it was requiring that extra bit of love.
Yeah.
So how would we do that?
That's on the on visible property of the screen.
Okay.
So when you get to the screen, when the screen is visible and I can see it, what we want to do is simply go ahead and refresh our data source. So the code here is refresh, open parentheses. The data source we want to refresh, in this case, the one that's populating our table and our form. So it does both in this case. It helps us.
Let's try it now.
And that should work for us. Go ahead and save. Don't forget to save all the time. And then once we have that, let's go ahead and preview this. We're going to go ahead and add in, let's
Some jump
choose
data.
Yeah, something
blah, blah,
in
blah.
here. Something in here. We'll put just numbers.
I see Maria's there, so that's
Maria
fine.
is there. Let's click save. All right, we got our banner notification. Let's go back to Maria, and
Hey,
there we go.
So
now
now
we can do that.
Can I click on that record and go and change it then?
Let's click on the record, and now when we click on it, what if I wanted to update? Maybe I put the size wrong or the weight wrong.
Okay, gotcha. That's the
Right?
final step then.
Yeah,
right?
that's our last piece here is when we select a record in the table, what should appear down here? How do we want to control the form?
Well, right now that form is in new mode,
Yeah.
right? So we needed to edit the record, so I assume we got to do something around that
Yeah,
process.
so let's go ahead and go get out of our preview here. And if we go to our table here, what we could do is instead of the items, right, in our properties, we can scroll on down and on select.
Okay.
So when we select something on the table, do something. Well, it says false, do nothing. So what we want to come over here and do is we want to take our form and switch it into edit mode when we click on it, right? Exactly. Gotcha. Because remember, our default is new. So we want to come in here and do edit form and go to our form here. And now when we do this, if we select a value on select of that, we want to go ahead and use that record and then populate it into
all of the code stays the same because you already had the item property set there.
Exactly. We already said when it said like which item, we said no item to display. Now we're saying that's the item to display, the one we select.
So if you alt click on that, does it actually do it?
So let's do it. Let's see, alt and click. Let's click away.
Let's hit the play button. Let's see what's going on.
Preview. And let's do this. I'm going to go cancel and go back into it and select it. And there we go.
All right,
so
cool.
maybe it just needed that refresh. It's good thing we put in that refresh that Brian mentioned. So there you go. It's going to refresh the data source, make sure it's working. Now we can come in. If we wanted to say, I actually didn't want to edit, I can just click cancel, go back out, come back in again. Here's our new.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we've been talking about these preview features. You don't have to use the preview features. There is a form. There is a galleries you can use. We chose to get a little bit more adventurous this session. Preview features are normally very stable. Once you get past the design quirks like we're seeing right now, it's great in production. We've used them all the time in production, but it is a matter of getting it to pass the head butting stage on the keyboard for a while. So John, this looks amazing. Now, there's one more step we have to do. We have to actually release this to others now. Now, we'll talk about sharing later, but how do we get this to actually publish it to where people can see this?
And it's great. It's just a click with one button here. We can go ahead and up in the upper right-hand corner here, and we can choose to publish. And what this will do is it's going to give you another save, right? And then what's going to do is store this as one of the versions of our app that we want to go ahead and turn so that other users, when they come and access it, they can actually see this one version that we've just allowed.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we can also, one of the things I like to do is put in some notes in here as well. What maybe, you don't necessarily have to put a date because that's captured, but what did you do? If you made any changes, any updates, put that in here as a note so you know later on, okay, this new version 12, 13, 14, whatever it is, we made this change to this screen, to this table, to this functionality so we can go fix it later on.
The great thing is, as soon as he hits publish button, he'll be able to see this on his phone. Yeah. Keep in mind, if you're in a development environment, you have to turn on apps in your developer environment on your app on your phone as well. But by doing that, now everybody can see it that has access to it.
Yeah.
Now, if you make any changes, we have to do that publish again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. And the nice about publish, you can roll back if something happens.
And you just restore a previous version. You get 6 months worth of previous versions to restore. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you want to have one set, just in case as a backup, you can always use that one.
That's awesome. So last question, John. You've covered a lot of stuff today, and we did a rapid fire, as much as we covered it in an hour. What class have you done or one of our coworkers done that you recommend in our on-demand platform for learning this stuff?
Yeah, we have Power Apps Beginner. So that's a great stepping stone, a starting point. If you don't know really anything about Power Apps, go ahead and take that one. That's really going to be your starting point. We have an advanced course as well out there. But we also have some built around Dataverse too. So we have our Dataverse course, Power Platform courses available that are all essentially using Canvas apps in different ways to be able to have different scenarios to work with. So if you are brand new, definitely take our beginner course. It's a great start to start on, and then kind of build yourself up from there. We also have our problem design solution. We have others there that are getting more into the advanced. Let's add in all the extra bells and whistles along the way.
And then hackathons also to learn with your own examples. You do those all the time actually for customers. All right, thank you so much for spending the time with us today and building an application in a hackathon style from end to end. Don't forget that if you look above me right now, you'll see a link out to our on-demand platform. We have dozens and dozens of classes for free out there that you can find, including our App in a Day class, which will help you continue your Power Apps journey. Also, if you want, you'll see the Potter's 40 code is going to give you 40% off that on-demand platform in case you want to see the other premium classes, and there's hundreds of them out there. And it also gives $40 to Potter's House as part of that to help them continue their journey. If you stay tuned, also, you'll see our live Q&A section right after this. You'll be redirected right over there in a moment here as well, or just click on the link right after this. Also, in case you're watching us in recorded fashion, thank you again for watching us as well. Let us know in the comments how you are going to plan to use Power Apps in your own environment also. Until then, thank you so much and have a great day.